Have you ever felt like life is speeding past you while you're stuck in place? Like everyone else has figured things out, career, relationships, purpose, while you're still trying to find your footing. Maybe you scroll through social media and see old classmates buying homes, getting married, starting businesses, and somehow it makes you feel behind, like you missed the memo on how to get life right. That sinking feeling in your stomach, the quiet frustration that whispers, "Why am I not where I should be?" It's one of the biggest lies we've been conditioned to believe. Here's the truth. You are not behind. You have never been behind. And Buddhism explains why. In the next few minutes, we're going to dismantle this illusion. We'll uncover why the idea of being behind is nothing more than a trick of the mind, an illusion created by false timelines, toxic comparison, and an attachment to a path that was never truly yours to begin with. Because if you really think about it, who decides what behind even means? Who wrote the script for how fast life should move? And more importantly, why should their script define your happiness? The 6 Buddhist teachings you're about to learn will completely shift your perspective on time, progress, and success. They will free you from the invisible chains that have been weighing you down. By the end, you won't just understand why you're not behind, you'll feel it in your bones. And once you do, everything will change. So, are you ready? Let's begin. If you've ever felt like time is slipping away and you're falling behind, you're not alone. The pressure to meet invisible deadlines, graduate by this age, find love by that age, achieve success before it's too late, has been drilled into our minds from childhood. But here's something Buddhism reveals. This entire way of thinking is based on an illusion. The idea that you're behind assumes there's a fixed timeline for life, as if we were all given the same blueprint at birth. But who set these rules, and why do we suffer so much when we feel like we're not keeping up? The truth is, time isn't what we think it is. It doesn't move in a straight line, and it doesn't dictate your worth. The feeling of being behind is not caused by reality. It's caused by attachment to an idea that doesn't exist. The way Buddhism dissolves this illusion is not by giving you another checklist or telling you to rush forward. It does something far more powerful. It frees you from the race entirely. Once you understand the Buddhist view on time, the pressure will lift, the anxiety will fade, and you'll see that there is nothing to catch up to, because you were never behind to begin with. At the root of suffering is attachment, not just to people or material things, but to ideas. And one of the most deeply ingrained ideas is the belief that time is fixed, rigid, and something we must conquer. In reality, time is fluid, subjective, and in many ways, an illusion. Buddhism teaches that suffering arises when we resist what is in favor of what we think should be. The thought, "I should have been more successful by now," or "I should have accomplished more," is a perfect example of this resistance. You are suffering not because of reality itself, but because you believe that your current place in life is wrong. But what if there was no wrong place to be? Time is not something that moves in a straight line toward a fixed destination. In Buddhist philosophy, time is not a master that we must serve. It is an unfolding process, a flow of change that has no ultimate end. The past is a memory, the future is unknown, and all that truly exists is this moment. Yet we torment ourselves over a timeline that exists only in our heads. One of the great Buddhist insights is that time is only as real as our attachment to it. The very idea of being behind assumes that there is a universal clock we all must follow, but different cultures, philosophies, and even individuals have entirely different perceptions of time. In some traditions, life is seen as a circular process of learning and growth, not a linear path with a defined start and finish. If time itself is fluid, then what exactly are we behind? From a Buddhist perspective, attachment to fixed timelines is one of the main causes of suffering. You believe you should be at a different stage in life, and this belief creates tension, frustration, and even shame. But let's question this belief. Who decided what on time means? The answer is clear. It is a social construct, a product of conditioning, and not an inherent truth of existence. If someone told you that you were running late for a train, you'd feel anxious until you realize there is no train. That's what happens when you realize that life has no fixed schedule. The moment you stop clinging to arbitrary deadlines, the stress dissolves. You can finally breathe. Buddhism teaches that true freedom comes when we let go of our attachment to rigid ideas of time. The Zen concept of no mind suggests that when we stop analyzing, comparing, and obsessing over how far along we should be, we actually move with greater ease. It's like unclenching your fist. Suddenly, everything flows. There is no cosmic judge keeping score, no finish line to cross at a certain age, no punishment for taking longer to find your path. Your journey is yours alone. And the moment you release yourself from false expectations, you will feel something you may not have felt in a long time: peace. Society often defines time as something to be spent or managed, but in Buddhism, time is something to be experienced. You don't own it, you don't control it. You exist within it, flowing like a river rather than swimming against the current. Many people fear they have wasted time, but wasted time is only a concept if you believe in a rigid, goal-driven structure of life. In reality, every experience you've had, every so-called mistake, every detour has contributed to who you are. Nothing has been lost. Even moments of stillness, of uncertainty, of lack of progress have shaped your journey in ways you can't yet see. We often feel behind because we measure our lives against external markers, career milestones, relationships, financial success. But what if progress was something deeper? What if the real measure of life was wisdom, inner peace, and presence? Buddhism teaches that being fully present is the only way to truly live. If you are always chasing the future, you are never here. You are always in a state of waiting, always longing for something else. The irony is that the moment you stop obsessing over where you should be, you actually arrive. One of the most powerful Buddhist concepts is anicca, or impermanence. Everything is in a state of change. Your thoughts, your circumstances, even the feeling of being behind. No state is permanent, and that includes your worries. The frustration you feel today will shift tomorrow, and a year from now, you might not even remember why you were so concerned. This is why Buddhists emphasize letting go, not in a passive, resigned way, but in a way that allows you to move through life with ease rather than resistance. When you detach from the need to be on a fixed timeline, you stop measuring your worth by external milestones. You start seeing your journey as a unique unfolding, not a race to be won. One of the most liberating realizations in Buddhism is that time is not something happening to you, it is something happening with you. You are not a victim of time, nor are you at its mercy. The idea of being too late or too slow is nothing more than a thought. And thoughts, as Buddhism teaches, are not ultimate truths. When you let go of the belief that you must keep up, something incredible happens. You start to trust your own rhythm. You start to appreciate where you are instead of constantly looking at where you should be. You start to live. In the end, breaking free from the illusion of being behind is not about speeding up or catching up. It's about realizing that there is nothing to catch up to. The only thing that exists is now, and when you fully embrace it, you will no longer feel like life is slipping away. The question is no longer, am I behind? The question is, am I present? Because presence, not speed, is what truly makes a life well lived. The feeling of being behind dissolves the moment we stop measuring time as something linear. It is an illusion that there is a single correct path, one road that all must follow, with some ahead and others trailing behind. But even after seeing through this illusion, another question arises. If progress in life is not linear, then what is it? The answer, according to Buddhism, is that existence is not a straight path toward a final destination, but a cycle that repeats itself endlessly. The struggle to get ahead, to be more successful, to prove oneself. This is all part of a cycle that has played out for lifetimes, not just in this one. The concept of samsara explains why no one is truly ahead or behind. From a higher perspective, progress in one lifetime is insignificant because existence itself is cyclical. Birth, suffering, death, rebirth. This wheel has been turning long before this lifetime and will continue long after. What feels like failure or success is nothing more than a temporary fluctuation within an endless cycle. People chase achievement, status, and security, believing that these will finally provide fulfillment. Yet even when they reach their goals, the longing for something more never ends. Every desire leads to another. Every accomplishment loses its thrill. Every moment of security fades into uncertainty. This is the nature of samsara, an endless race where the finish line is never reached, because there is no finish line. In this cycle, no one can truly claim to be ahead or behind, because no one is moving toward a final destination. Life is not a competition, but an experience, and each person is caught in their own patterns of craving, attachment, and suffering. Some may appear successful now, but their suffering may be hidden. Others may struggle, yet they could be closer to awakening than those who seem to have everything. What is considered progress by society is often just a deeper entanglement in the cycle of samsara. Wealth, power, recognition, these do not free a person from suffering, but bind them to it. Even the most outwardly successful individuals are still subject to sickness, aging, disappointment, and loss. No matter how much one gains, the cycle of craving and dissatisfaction continues. One lifetime is just a small fragment of a much larger process. The idea of reaching a final form of success within one short human life is based on the illusion that this is the only life. But according to Buddhist teachings, consciousness has been moving through different forms for countless lifetimes. Whatever struggles exist now are not permanent, just as whatever success is gained now is not permanent. The cycle continues. The desire to get ahead, to prove oneself, to meet expectations. These do not end with the achievement of a goal. They continue in new forms, trapping the mind in a loop of striving and never arriving. The deeper suffering of samsara is that every gain eventually becomes a loss, and every loss leads to new craving. People chase love only to fear losing it. They seek wealth only to become anxious about maintaining it. They pursue knowledge only to realize how much remains unknown. There is no escape from the constant fluctuation of gain and loss as long as one remains attached to the illusion that fulfillment comes from external achievements. The cycle doesn't reward those who strive harder. It only entangles them further. Many who feel behind in life are caught in this illusion. They believe they must reach a certain level of success to be happy, without realizing that even if they reached it, their mind would soon find another reason to feel incomplete. The moment one craving is satisfied, another emerges. The cycle never ends because it is fueled by the very belief that something is missing. Those who appear to be ahead in life are often just as trapped as those who feel behind, because they too are chasing a version of happiness that can never be permanently grasped. True freedom is not found in running faster, but in stepping off the wheel entirely. The way out of samsara is not through more effort, greater achievement, or external validation. It is through seeing the cycle for what it is and refusing to be ruled by its demands. This is why monks renounce worldly attachments, not because they reject life, but because they understand that the endless race leads nowhere. They are not giving up success. They are giving up the illusion that success will complete them. Understanding the nature of samsara also dissolves the illusion of comparison. One person may reach material success in this lifetime, but what does that mean in the grand scale of existence? If life is an ongoing cycle, then every high point will be followed by a low point. Every period of gain will be followed by loss. The desire to catch up to others is meaningless because no one stays ahead forever. No one escapes the impermanence of life. Those who seem to have everything will one day lose it. Those who struggle now may rise in another time. The race is an illusion because it does not lead to freedom. It only leads to more running. The mind, trapped in samsara, constantly grasps at the future, believing that fulfillment will come when certain conditions are met. But this is the great deception of life, the belief that once I achieve this, I will finally be happy, is a trick played by the mind to keep itself attached to desire. People spend their entire lives chasing goals, believing that once they arrive, they will find peace. Yet the moment they achieve what they wanted, the feeling of wholeness is temporary, and soon another craving takes its place. The cycle repeats endlessly. The teachings of the Buddha offer an alternative. Instead of chasing, recognize the illusion. Instead of constantly moving forward, stop and look deeper. Instead of seeking fulfillment outside, turn inward. Those who feel behind in life are often the ones who are most deeply attached to the illusion of progress, believing that their happiness is always just slightly out of reach. But happiness is never found in the next milestone. It is found in the dissolution of craving itself. What many fear most is stagnation. They believe that without chasing progress, they will fall into despair, that without ambition, life will lose meaning. But true liberation is not stagnation. It is freedom from the cycle of endless longing. It's a kind of stillness that is not passive, but deeply aware. It's a realization that nothing external can complete what is already whole. This is why those who have stepped off the wheel of samsara radiate a kind of peace that cannot be shaken by external circumstances. They have ceased to measure their worth by progress and instead live fully in the present. If there is no final destination in samsara, then why do people run so desperately? The fear of stopping comes from the belief that without striving, one will be left behind. But left behind where? If there is no finish line, then no one can be late. If existence is cyclical, then all rushing is just an illusion of the mind. Those who grasp this truth find something that endless striving could never provide: the ability to be at peace with life exactly as it is. Understanding samsara does not mean doing nothing. It means doing everything without attachment. It means engaging in life fully while knowing that no external achievement will bring lasting completion. It means releasing the belief that one must get ahead, because getting ahead is an illusion to begin with. Progress is not about moving faster. It is about moving with awareness. It is about knowing that nothing external can give you what you seek, because what you seek has always been within. The cycle of samsara will continue, but for those who understand its nature, it no longer has power. They do not chase the future, nor do they mourn the past. They do not see themselves as ahead or behind, because they have stepped outside of the illusion entirely. They live fully, not because they are striving for more, but because they have seen that nothing was ever missing. They are free. The illusion of being ahead or behind disappears when one understands the cyclical nature of existence. Yet another force keeps the mind trapped: comparison. Even when the truth of samsara is seen, the habit of measuring oneself against others remains deeply embedded. The mind constantly assesses where it stands, whether in terms of success, intelligence, relationships, or happiness. It finds someone richer and feels inadequate. It finds someone struggling and feels reassured. This constant weighing of self against others is one of the greatest causes of suffering, and Buddhism offers a way to step off this exhausting cycle. The human tendency to compare is rooted in attachment. The mind attaches itself to identities, achievements, and external validation. It seeks proof that it is worthy, that it is progressing, that it matters. When it sees another person who seems to have more money, more recognition, more fulfillment, it begins to suffer. This suffering is not caused by reality itself, but by the attachment to the belief that worth is measured externally. Social comparison is the source of much unnecessary pain, because it reinforces the illusion that happiness comes from being superior or equal to others. But superiority is a fleeting illusion. Even those who appear to be at the top of society's hierarchy are haunted by the fear of losing their status. Even those who seem to have everything are tormented by the knowledge that someone else has more. The mind that is ruled by comparison never rests. It is either striving to surpass others or fearing that it is being left behind. The teachings of Buddhism reveal that comparison is a form of craving, a grasping for validation that can never be fully satisfied. Craving arises when the mind believes it lacks something. It looks outward for fulfillment, but fulfillment never comes from external status. The mind can achieve the highest recognition and still feel empty. It can possess the greatest wealth and still feel unsatisfied. The desire to be better than others is a distraction from the deeper truth that peace is not found in comparison, but in detachment from it. Comparison is an illusion because each person's path is unique. No two lives are the same, yet the mind insists on judging itself based on external timelines and achievements. A person who seems successful now may struggle in ways that are hidden. A person who appears lost may be on the verge of great wisdom. The mind that compares does not see the full picture. It only sees fragments, distorted by its own fears and desires. To compare oneself to another is to compare two completely different journeys, each shaped by different causes, experiences, and karmic patterns. It is an exercise in false measurement. Buddhism teaches that true freedom is found in stepping off the wheel of comparison altogether. This is not a passive acceptance of mediocrity, but a release from the false belief that self-worth is determined by how one ranks against others. The pursuit of superiority is just another form of suffering. Even those who achieve it remain bound to the fear of losing it. Those who base their identity on being ahead of others are trapped just as much as those who believe they're behind. To step off the wheel of comparison, one must cultivate detachment. This does not mean detachment from effort or growth, but detachment from external validation. A person who is deeply at peace does not need to prove anything to anyone. They do not measure their progress based on someone else's timeline. They do not feel threatened by another person's success, nor do they feel superior when they achieve more. Their sense of worth is not tied to rank or recognition. They're content in their own unfolding, knowing that their journey is theirs alone. One of the greatest sources of suffering in modern life is the endless exposure to others' lives. Social media has amplified the habit of comparison to an extreme level. People no longer compare themselves only to those in their immediate environment, but to millions across the world. The illusion of other people's perfection is constantly presented, making one's own life seem lacking. The Buddhist perspective reveals that this suffering is caused not by reality, but by attachment to illusion. The images and stories people see are not the full truth. They are carefully curated, designed to showcase the best moments while hiding the struggles, insecurities, and suffering that exist behind them. The mind that compares itself to these illusions is fighting a battle that cannot be won. Stepping off the wheel means letting go of the need to define oneself through external reference points. It means breaking free from the constant questioning of whether one is doing well compared to others, and instead focusing on whether one is truly at peace. The person who is constantly comparing is never present. Their mind is always elsewhere, thinking of what they lack, of what they could have, of how others perceive them. They are chasing a moving target, never arriving at a place of contentment. Detachment does not mean disengagement. It is not about withdrawing from life, but about moving through life without being controlled by external measurements. A person can still pursue growth, still work toward meaningful goals, but without attachment to status or validation. They do not need to announce their success or prove their worth. They do not feel diminished when others succeed. Their sense of fulfillment comes from within, not from recognition or superiority. One of the core teachings of Buddhism is that suffering arises from attachment to identity. When a person identifies as successful, they suffer when that identity is threatened. When they identify as falling behind, they suffer under the weight of that belief. True freedom comes from releasing these labels altogether. The mind that is at peace does not need to define itself through comparison. It simply exists, fully present, fully alive, without the constant need to evaluate itself against others. Those who are deeply attached to comparison often feel they must constantly prove their value. They fear being insignificant, overlooked, or forgotten. But significance does not come from external ranking. It comes from the depth of presence. A person who is fully engaged in the moment, who is truly aware, who moves through life with clarity and kindness, is far more fulfilled than someone who achieves external success, but is never present to experience it. The teachings of Buddhism offer a radical shift. Rather than striving to be better than others, strive to be free from the need to compare at all. When comparison is no longer the measure of self-worth, life opens up in a new way. There is space for joy without conditions, for growth without anxiety, for connection without judgment. The person who has stepped off the wheel is not distracted by what others are doing. They do not live in a constant state of mental competition. They are fully immersed in their own experience, not because they have stopped caring, but because they have stopped grasping. There is no peace in a life that is spent measuring against others. There is no end to the cycle of suffering when worth is determined by rank. The only escape is to step outside the framework entirely. When one releases the need to be ahead, behind, or equal, they are no longer bound by the suffering of comparison. They can move through life with lightness, no longer weighed down by the pressure to measure up. True fulfillment is found in presence, not in position. Those who cling to external validation will never be satisfied, because there is always another level to reach, another person to surpass, another way to feel inadequate. But those who detach from the need to compare discover something that external success could never provide: freedom. They no longer chase recognition, nor do they fear obscurity. They are not troubled by others' achievements, nor do they seek reassurance in being superior. They simply are. The deepest realization in Buddhism is that all suffering caused by comparison is self-created. The mind builds its own prison by constantly seeking validation through rank and status. The key to escape is already in hand: letting go. There is nothing to prove. There is no race to win. There is no higher worth in being ahead, and no shame in being behind, because these positions exist only in the mind. When comparison falls away, the mind becomes light, unburdened, open. A person who has stepped off the wheel no longer looks sideways to see where they stand. They no longer chase the illusion of being enough in the eyes of others. They are at peace, not because they have won anything, but because they have let go of the belief that there was ever a competition to begin with. Letting go of comparison creates a sense of freedom, yet for many it also creates discomfort. Without external markers of progress, without measuring against others, a new uncertainty emerges. If life is not a race, then what is it? If success is not defined by surpassing others, then how do we know we are on the right path? This uncertainty can feel unsettling, but in Zen, it is not seen as a problem. It is seen as the doorway to wisdom. The feeling of being lost is not a sign of failure, but an invitation to embrace something deeper: the beginner's mind. The greatest suffering often arises not from what is unknown, but from the fear of the unknown. People cling to certainty because it provides a sense of security. They want clear answers, fixed plans, predictable outcomes. But life is never fixed. The illusion of certainty is comforting but false. Every belief, every plan, every identity that seems solid will eventually shift. In the face of this impermanence, resisting uncertainty only creates anxiety. The mind that clings to what it thinks it knows is constantly battling the reality that nothing is ever fully known. The Zen tradition teaches that wisdom begins when one stops trying to force certainty and instead embraces the openness of not knowing. The beginner's mind is a state of openness, curiosity, and humility. It is free from preconceptions and rigid beliefs. It does not assume that it already understands, nor does it grasp for immediate conclusions. It simply allows things to unfold as they are. In this way, the beginner's mind is not ignorance. It is a deep awareness of how little can ever truly be grasped. When the mind lets go of the need to categorize everything as known or unknown, right or wrong, ahead or behind, it enters a state of receptivity where real insight can arise. Feeling lost is often a sign that the mind is outgrowing old assumptions. Many people see confusion as a problem, but Zen sees it as a sign of expansion. When one feels uncertain, it is often because they are beginning to see through past illusions. The certainty they once relied on no longer satisfies. The paths that once seemed clear now appear limited. This is not failure. It is awakening. The mind that admits it does not know is the mind that is ready to learn. In Zen, The beginner's mind is considered a path to true wisdom because it does not cling to fixed ideas. Those who believe they already know close themselves off from discovery. They repeat the same patterns, trapped by their own assumptions. But those who embrace the unknown see every moment as fresh, every experience as an opportunity to learn. They do not need to prove themselves or cling to expertise. They are free to approach life with openness, without the burden of having to be right or certain. Many people fear not knowing because they equate it with weakness. They feel that if they admit uncertainty, they will appear directionless or inadequate. But this is a misunderstanding. The mind that is rigidly certain is more fragile than the mind that is open. When circumstances change, the person who clings to certainty struggles. They resist, they deny, they break under the pressure of needing things to be as they expected. But the person who has embraced uncertainty adapts. They do not fight reality. They move with it, learning as they go. This flexibility is true strength. The need for certainty is also closely tied to ego. The ego wants to believe it has things figured out. It seeks validation through knowledge, status, and control. But the more one clings to certainty, the more suffering arises when reality doesn't conform to expectations. The person who insists on always having the right answer lives in fear of being wrong. The person who needs a fixed plan lives in fear of change. In contrast, the beginner's mind does not attach its identity to knowing. It is comfortable saying, "I do not know," without shame or fear. Some of the greatest insights in Zen arise from surrendering the need to explain everything. The mind is conditioned to analyze, to categorize, to seek clear definitions. But reality is vast, fluid, and beyond rigid explanation. The beginner's mind allows experience to be what it is without forcing it into conceptual boxes. Instead of immediately labeling things as good or bad, right or wrong, success or failure, it simply observes. This openness allows for a deeper understanding that goes beyond intellectual reasoning. People often resist not knowing because they equate it with stagnation. They believe that without certainty, they will become passive, lost, or unable to move forward. But true not knowing is not inaction. It is deep engagement with the present. When one is not trapped by preconceptions, they respond to life with clarity and spontaneity. They do not follow rigid scripts, but instead move in harmony with what arises. This is the essence of Zen practice, responding to each moment with full presence without the need to control it. The mind that clings to knowing is often restless. It constantly seeks reassurance, constantly analyzes, constantly struggles to predict the future. But the beginner's mind is light. It does not carry the weight of having to figure everything out at once. It trusts the unfolding of life. This trust does not come from blind faith, but from direct experience. When one stops grasping for certainty, they find that clarity emerges naturally. Answers reveal themselves not through force, but through presence. One of the greatest benefits of the beginner's mind is the ability to see beauty in ordinary moments. When the mind is rigid, it overlooks what is in front of it. It is too focused on its plans, its worries, its assumptions. But when the mind is open, every moment becomes new. A simple conversation, a breath of air, the sound of rain, these become deeply alive. The person who believes they already understand life sees nothing new. But the person who allows themselves to not know sees wonder everywhere. The fear of not knowing often stems from the belief that one must always have direction. People are taught that they must always have a goal, a plan, a clear sense of where they are going. But this belief creates suffering when life inevitably shifts. There will be times of uncertainty, times when the old paths no longer make sense. In these moments, resisting not knowing only deepens the struggle. But if one embraces the unknown, they discover that not having all the answers is not a failure. It is an opening. Many of the most transformative moments in life arise from the willingness to let go of certainty. The person who clings to a rigid career path may miss opportunities they never considered. The person who insists on a fixed idea of love may overlook connections that do not fit their expectations. The person who fears change may resist the very experiences that would lead to the deepest growth. But the person with a beginner's mind is free. They do not force life to conform to their ideas. They meet life as it is, discovering new possibilities that they could not have planned. Wisdom does not come from accumulating knowledge alone. It comes from knowing when to let go of what one thinks they know. The mind that is too full of certainty has no room for learning, but the mind that is open is constantly expanding. It does not need to hold on to rigid definitions of self, success, or progress. It allows itself to evolve, to be reshaped by experience. The beginner's mind does not fear being lost, because it understands that being lost is part of the process. It does not rush to define its path too quickly. It does not grasp for premature conclusions. It trusts that clarity will come in its own time. This patience allows for a deeper unfolding, one that is not forced, but natural. For those who feel uncertain about their path, the greatest wisdom is to not fight the uncertainty, but to embrace it, to see it not as a problem, but as a sign that they are growing. The person who feels lost is often closer to awakening than the person who clings to false certainty. They are beginning to see through illusions, beginning to question what they once took for granted. This is not failure. This is transformation. The deepest peace is not found in having all the answers, but in being at ease with not knowing. Those who have embraced the beginner's mind do not need to chase certainty. They do not live in fear of being wrong. They do not rush to label their experience. They are free to meet life as it comes, fully present, fully engaged, without the burden of having to figure everything out. They step into the unknown, not with fear, but with curiosity, knowing that every moment is a doorway to something new. Letting go of the need for certainty allows the mind to rest in the openness of not knowing. But even as one embraces the beginner's mind, another attachment remains, the attachment to timelines. The belief that life must unfold in a certain way, at a certain pace, creates a deep sense of pressure. It leads to the idea that one is falling behind, that time is slipping away, that opportunities are being lost. This attachment is rooted in a misunderstanding of impermanence. It assumes that life is something to be controlled rather than something that moves in its own rhythm. Anicca, the Buddhist teaching on impermanence, reveals that everything is in a state of constant change. Nothing remains fixed, not thoughts, not emotions, not external circumstances. The suffering of feeling behind comes from resisting this truth. The mind grasps onto certain timelines as if they are permanent, believing that happiness depends on reaching specific milestones at specific points in life. But these milestones are illusions, and clinging to them only creates frustration. Life does not follow a straight path. It moves in waves, in cycles, in unexpected turns. When one expects it to follow a rigid schedule, suffering is inevitable. The idea of falling behind assumes that life is a race with a single path forward. It assumes that success is measured by how quickly one moves through predefined stages. But who created these timelines? They are not natural laws. They are social constructs. Different cultures have different expectations for when certain things should happen. In one society, a person is considered successful if they are married by a certain age, while in another, success is defined by career achievements. These expectations are arbitrary, yet they shape the way people measure their worth. The belief that one must keep up creates constant anxiety. It turns life into a struggle rather than an experience. Impermanence shows that no stage in life is final, no success is permanent, and no struggle lasts forever. A person who seems ahead today may face unexpected setbacks tomorrow. A person who feels lost now may find clarity in ways they never expected. Nothing stays the same, and because of this, the idea of being ahead or behind is meaningless. The path is always shifting. What seems like failure may later be seen as the beginning of something greater. What seems like missed opportunity may later be recognized as redirection. The suffering of feeling behind comes not from reality, but from the belief that things should have happened differently. This belief is a form of resistance to what is. Many people suffer because they believe they are running out of time. They fear that if they do not achieve certain things by a certain age, they have failed. This fear is based on the illusion that life is linear, but impermanence teaches that life unfolds in its own time, in ways that cannot always be predicted. A person may struggle in their youth and thrive in later years. Another may achieve success early, but find themselves lost later. The unfolding of life does not follow fixed rules. The pressure to keep up only blinds one to the unique unfolding of their own path. Attachment to timelines also creates suffering because it leads to constant comparison. People measure their progress against others, believing that if someone else has achieved more, they themselves are lacking. But everyone experiences life at different speeds. Some lessons come early, others later. Some people rise quickly and then fall, while others move slowly and build something lasting. There is no universal timeline for growth. The belief that there is creates unnecessary stress. It makes people feel inadequate, when in reality they are simply moving through their own process. Impermanence teaches that no state is fixed. A person may feel lost now, but this is not a permanent condition. They may feel behind, but nothing remains in place forever. The mind, however, resists this truth. It wants to hold on to certainty. It wants guarantees. It wants to know exactly when things will fall into place. But life does not provide guarantees. The only certainty is change. The moment one accepts this, the suffering of feeling behind begins to dissolve. There is no rush because there is nothing to catch up to. The path is always shifting, and each moment is part of a larger unfolding. The desire to control time is one of the greatest sources of suffering. People try to hold on to youth, success, relationships, and stability, but everything eventually changes. The more one clings, the more pain they experience. The only way to move with peace is to let go of rigid expectations, to trust that change is not something to fear, but something to flow with. The mind that is attached to specific timelines experiences deep frustration when life does not conform to its expectations. But the mind that understands impermanence moves with life rather than against it. Society reinforces the illusion that life must follow a fixed structure. People are taught that certain ages should bring certain achievements. But these expectations are based on external conditioning, not on the reality of life's flow. Many people suffer because they try to fit into these artificial timelines rather than trusting their own process. They feel like failures if they do not meet certain milestones, even when their unique journey is unfolding exactly as it needs to. The suffering of falling behind is self-created. It exists only in comparison to timelines that have no inherent truth. When one truly understands impermanence, the fear of time slipping away disappears. There is no need to rush, no need to chase, no need to measure against others. There is only this moment, and this moment is enough. The future will unfold as it must. The past is already gone. The mind that accepts this moves through life with ease rather than resistance. It does not fight against the flow of change, but moves with it. This is the essence of wisdom, not controlling time, but trusting it. One of the greatest lessons of impermanence is that loss is inevitable. People attach their happiness to specific outcomes, believing that if they achieve something, they will be fulfilled. But even when they reach their goals, change continues. They lose what they worked for. They move into new struggles. They discover that no external achievement provides permanent peace. The belief that reaching a certain point in life will bring lasting satisfaction is another illusion. The only way to find peace is to let go of attachment to any fixed outcome. Impermanence does not mean that nothing matters. It means that everything is in motion. When one stops resisting this, they begin to experience life fully. They stop chasing a future that is always just out of reach. They stop fearing that they're too late. They stop grasping for stability in a world that is always shifting. Instead, they meet each moment as it comes, knowing that it is temporary, knowing that the only constant is change. Many people struggle because they believe they have missed their chance. They look at past decisions and feel regret. They wish they had done things differently. But impermanence teaches that there are always new opportunities. Life is never static. A door that closes today may lead to an unexpected opening tomorrow. The mind that is attached to past mistakes or missed chances is blind to what is still possible. Clinging to what could have been prevents one from seeing what is. True freedom comes when one stops trying to control the flow of time. The mind that releases rigid expectations is light. It does not suffer when things do not go as planned. It does not fear change. It does not believe in the illusion of being behind. It trusts that life unfolds in its own way, in its own time. This trust is not passive. It is an active engagement with reality as it is, rather than as one wishes it to be. Letting go of timelines does not mean giving up on growth. It means understanding that growth happens in different ways for different people. It means recognizing that rushing does not create wisdom. It means seeing that being present is more valuable than constantly trying to reach the next stage. The mind that lets go of the idea of being behind finds peace. It no longer struggles against time. It no longer feels anxious about what has not yet happened. It simply moves with life, fully aware that nothing is fixed, nothing is permanent, and because of that, there is nothing to fear. Letting go of rigid timelines brings a sense of relief, yet for many, another question quickly arises. If nothing is fixed, if there is no race to win, then what is the purpose of effort? Should one still pursue goals, work towards self-improvement, or strive for success? The mind, conditioned to equate effort with attachment, struggles to understand how one can move forward without grasping, how one can work towards something without suffering over the outcome. Buddhism offers a path that reconciles this seeming contradiction, the middle way. It is a way of engaging fully with life, making effort without being consumed by it, pursuing success without becoming attached to it, growing without losing inner peace. Many people fall into extremes when it comes to ambition. On one side, there is excessive striving, where success becomes an obsession and self-worth is tied to achievement. This path leads to burnout, anxiety, and dissatisfaction, as even reaching goals brings only temporary relief before the next goal takes its place. On the other side, there is avoidance, where fear of failure or detachment from ambition results in stagnation, a reluctance to engage with life fully. Neither extreme brings balance. The middle way offers an alternative: effort without clinging, progress without self-destruction, ambition without suffering. Buddhism does not reject effort or growth. In fact, the teachings emphasize discipline, mindfulness, and continuous learning. But these are approached with a different mindset, one that values the process over the outcome, one that works with presence rather than anxiety. When ambition is driven by attachment, it becomes a form of craving. The mind chases goals, believing that fulfillment will come only once success is achieved. But because nothing is permanent, because every goal is followed by another, the satisfaction never lasts. The cycle of wanting more continues endlessly. The middle way frees one from this trap. It does not ask that ambition be abandoned, but that it be approached with awareness. Effort is made, but without the illusion that external success will bring lasting completion. Growth is pursued, but without sacrificing inner peace. One of the core misunderstandings about success is the belief that happiness exists at the finish line. People tell themselves that once they achieve a certain milestone, financial stability, recognition, mastery of a skill, then they will feel complete. But fulfillment does not work this way. The mind that is dissatisfied before success will often be dissatisfied after success. This is because craving is not satisfied by achievement. It simply shifts to a new target. The middle way teaches that real fulfillment does not come from reaching goals, but from how one engages with the path itself. When effort is made with mindfulness, without attachment to results, every step becomes meaningful rather than just a means to an end. Many struggle with the idea of balancing ambition with detachment. They fear that without attachment, they will lose motivation, that without strong desire, they will not push themselves to improve. But the greatest achievements often come not from desperate striving, but from focused, present effort. The mind that is fully engaged in an action, without obsessing over its outcome, works with greater clarity. Athletes speak of being in flow, where their actions become effortless. Artists describe moments of deep immersion, where time disappears and creativity flows freely. These states do not arise from anxiety or overthinking, but from deep presence. When one applies effort without clinging, work becomes more fluid, more effective, more fulfilling. Success, as defined by society, is often built on pressure to be the best, to constantly outperform, to prove worth through achievements. This creates stress, competition, and a never-ending race to maintain status. But success, when approached through the middle way, is something else entirely. It is not measured by external comparison, but by internal alignment. It is not about accumulating more, but about refining one's purpose and skills with awareness. A person who follows this path may still strive for excellence, but their effort is fueled by curiosity and passion rather than by fear of failure. They may still pursue financial stability, but they are not consumed by greed or the need for status. They work, they grow, they evolve, but they do not suffer over outcomes they cannot control. One of the greatest causes of stress in modern life is the belief that one must always be doing more. People feel guilty when they rest, anxious when they are not moving fast enough, but constant action does not equal progress. Rest, reflection, and stillness are just as important as effort. The middle way recognizes this balance. It teaches that effort must be sustainable, that overexertion leads to exhaustion, and that true success is found in harmony, not in endless striving. Many who chase achievement relentlessly find that when they finally pause, they feel empty. They worked so hard to get somewhere, only to realize they never fully lived the journey. The middle way prevents this by ensuring that the process itself is meaningful. Burnout is a direct result of imbalance. When success is pursued with attachment, the mind is in a constant state of tension. It fears losing progress. It fears falling behind. It fears not being good enough. This fear drives endless work, but it also drains energy, creativity, and joy. The middle way removes this pressure. It allows for ambition, but without the mental exhaustion that comes from constant worry. It allows for progress, but without the suffering that comes from unrealistic expectations. When one works with focus but without fear, when one grows without the need to force results, life becomes lighter, yet no less productive. Another misconception about detachment is that it means giving up on goals. But detachment does not mean passivity. It does not mean sitting back and waiting for life to unfold without effort. It means engaging fully with life, but without being controlled by external outcomes. A person who practices the middle way does not avoid challenges. They meet them with clarity. They do not reject ambition. They pursue it with balance. They do not fear failure. They learn from it without letting it define them. Their motivation comes not from desperation, but from a deep sense of purpose. Buddhism teaches that the true purpose of effort is not to accumulate external rewards, but to cultivate wisdom, skill, and inner peace. When work is done with mindfulness, every task becomes an opportunity for growth. The smallest action, done with awareness, can be deeply fulfilling. This is why monks who have renounced worldly success engage in daily tasks with full attention. Sweeping the floor, preparing a meal, carrying water. These are not distractions from a greater purpose. They are the purpose because they are done with full presence. When one approaches all actions this way, work is no longer something to endure in order to reach a future goal. It becomes a practice in itself. Many people struggle with feeling like their efforts are wasted if they do not achieve the results they expected. But effort is never wasted when it is approached with awareness. Skills developed, lessons learned, experiences gained. These are valuable regardless of external validation. The middle way shifts the focus from "What will this effort get me?" to "How can I engage fully with what I am doing?" This shift removes stress, because it is no longer about reaching a destination, but about deepening the quality of each step. The attachment to success is often fueled by fear. Fear of being left behind, fear of not being good enough, fear of not living up to expectations. But when one releases this fear, they find that they can still pursue meaningful goals without suffering over them. They can still work hard without being controlled by anxiety. They can still improve without feeling like they are chasing something just out of reach. Success, in the Buddhist sense, is not about external validation. It is about the ability to engage with life without being ruled by fear or desire. A person who has mastered the middle way does not hesitate to take action, but they do not grasp at results. They do not avoid ambition, but they do not let ambition consume them. They do not stop growing, but they do not see growth as a requirement for happiness. Their mind is clear, their efforts are focused, and their sense of fulfillment is not dependent on what they achieve. They work because they are engaged in life, not because they are trying to escape something or prove something. This is the freedom that comes from balancing effort without clinging. It is a way of living that allows for deep engagement without the suffering that comes from attachment. It is a way of working that brings excellence without exhaustion. It is a way of striving without struggling. Those who follow this path do not move too fast or too slow. They are not trapped by perfectionism or by laziness. They move with intention, with awareness, with balance. And in doing so, they discover that success is not something to chase. It is something that naturally arises when one is fully present, fully engaged, and fully at peace with whatever comes. Balancing effort without clinging brings clarity, but for many, a deeper struggle remains. The belief that fulfillment lies somewhere outside of themselves, the idea that success, recognition, love, or wealth will finally provide lasting happiness is so deeply ingrained that even after letting go of attachment to timelines and rigid ambition, a quiet longing still lingers. This longing, this subtle sense of dissatisfaction, is what Buddhism calls dukkha, the unavoidable suffering that arises from craving, resistance, and mistaken expectations about what brings true peace. Dukkha is not just the obvious suffering of pain, loss, or hardship. It is also the quiet discomfort beneath the surface of even the most successful lives. It is the restless feeling that something is still missing, that happiness is always just a little out of reach. It is the way the mind attaches itself to external goals, believing that fulfillment will come after something happens, after achieving a dream, after finding the right relationship, after reaching financial security. But the moment one milestone is reached, the mind quickly replaces it with another. Satisfaction never lasts. This endless cycle of desire and disappointment is the foundation of suffering. The illusion of external fulfillment is one of the most powerful deceptions in life. The mind constructs images of what will make it happy, and it chases these images endlessly, rarely questioning whether they hold real substance. People devote years to careers they do not love, believing financial success will bring them peace, only to find that even wealth carries stress and dissatisfaction. Others seek love, expecting it to complete them, only to discover that relationships, while meaningful, do not erase inner emptiness. Even those who achieve all they ever wanted often experience a deep confusion. Why does happiness still feel temporary? Why does contentment never stay? Buddhism teaches that this suffering does not come from life itself, but from mistaken expectations. The mind assumes that external circumstances have the power to create lasting fulfillment. It believes that happiness can be secured through status, achievement, or control. But everything external is impermanent. Success fades, relationships change, the body ages, material wealth is unstable. The more one builds their sense of happiness on things that are subject to change, the more they suffer when those things inevitably shift. Many people who feel behind in life are not actually suffering because of their situation, but because of the belief that something external should have made them happy by now. They compare themselves to others, measuring their own fulfillment against what they assume others have achieved. But even those who appear ahead are often trapped in the same cycle of craving. Everyone is searching, everyone is chasing, everyone believes that something is missing. This universal dissatisfaction is not a sign of personal failure. It is a fundamental truth of the human condition. Dukkha arises whenever there is attachment to specific outcomes, to the idea that life should have unfolded differently, to the belief that happiness comes from external sources. The mind clings to images of how things should be and suffers when reality does not align with them. But these images are fabrications. They are projections, created by conditioning, shaped by past experiences, reinforced by society. They are not truth. When one begins to see that their suffering is not caused by external lack, but by internal attachment, a shift happens. The cycle of longing begins to break. Letting go of the illusion of external fulfillment does not mean abandoning desires or giving up on life. It means seeing clearly that nothing external will ever provide permanent contentment. It means engaging with the world fully, but without the expectation that anything outside will complete what is already whole within. It means shifting the focus from trying to get something from life to simply being present in it. When the mind no longer clings to the future for happiness, the present becomes enough. The reason external fulfillment fails to satisfy is that it is always temporary. Every peak experience fades. The joy of achievement diminishes. The excitement of new love settles. The thrill of recognition is short-lived. If happiness depends on maintaining these highs, suffering is inevitable. But if one understands that happiness is not something to chase, but something to cultivate internally, they are no longer dependent on the external world for peace. They can enjoy success without fearing its loss. They can love without clinging. They can move through life without grasping for something more. One of the deepest causes of suffering is the belief that happiness is always somewhere else, somewhere in the future, somewhere in another person, somewhere in a better version of oneself. But this search is endless. Even those who appear to have everything are often still searching. There is no external destination where suffering permanently ends, because suffering is not caused by what one has or does not have. It is caused by the mind's refusal to accept life as it is. The moment one stops chasing and starts being present, the illusion of missing out begins to dissolve. Dukkha is not just about suffering in the traditional sense. It also refers to the subtle dissatisfaction that lingers even in moments of joy. This dissatisfaction arises because the mind is always grasping, always preparing for what comes next, always looking for more. The belief that something better is just around the corner makes it impossible to fully appreciate what is already here. People rush through life, accomplishing, acquiring, proving themselves, but rarely pausing to ask whether their pursuit is actually bringing them closer to peace. Buddhism does not suggest renouncing all desires. It teaches balance, the middle way. It encourages effort, engagement, and growth, but without attachment. One can pursue success without believing that success is the source of happiness. One can enjoy love without believing that love is the key to completion. One can set goals without becoming trapped by them. The difference between suffering and peace is not in what one does, but in how one relates to their own desires. A person who pursues a dream with attachment is consumed by anxiety and fear of failure. A person who pursues a dream with presence enjoys the process itself, knowing that fulfillment does not depend on the outcome. Many who feel behind in life assume that if they had more money, more recognition, more clarity, their suffering would end. But suffering is not cured by more. It is cured by seeing through the illusion that more was ever the answer. There's always another level to reach. There's always someone who has achieved more. The cycle does not stop until one recognizes that nothing external will ever create lasting peace. This realization is not depressing. It is liberating. It removes the pressure to chase, to prove, to be somewhere else in life. It allows one to engage with life fully, but without the weight of expectation. Understanding dukkha does not mean avoiding pleasure or rejecting joy. It means appreciating life as it is, without grasping for something beyond it. It means seeing that happiness is not out there, but always within reach, in the simplest of moments. Breathing, moving, experiencing, being. The endless chase for fulfillment prevents people from realizing they already have access to the peace they are searching for. When the need for external validation falls away, life becomes lighter. There is space to enjoy, to explore, to experience, without the constant pressure of needing to get somewhere. The suffering of feeling behind in life is rooted in a misunderstanding. It is the belief that something is missing, that one must catch up, that happiness will come later. But dukkha teaches that this is a false promise. Later never arrives. The future is always shifting. The only place where peace can be found is now. The question is not whether one has achieved enough, acquired enough, or proven enough. The question is whether one is fully present in other own life, as it is, without waiting for something else to make it complete. Letting go of the illusion of external fulfillment does not mean one stops striving for a meaningful life. It means that one stops expecting external things to provide what can only come from within. A person who understands this is free. They no longer live in a constant state of waiting. They no longer feel inadequate because of artificial timelines. They no longer measure their worth by comparison. They do not avoid effort, but they are not consumed by it. They do not reject desires, but they do not suffer over them. They live with clarity, knowing that nothing outside can give them what they already possess, the ability to be fully at peace in this moment, as it is. Letting go of the illusion that external fulfillment will complete you brings clarity, but another thought often lingers in the background: the weight of the past. Many people feel trapped by their history, believing that previous mistakes, failures, or missed opportunities have set them on a path they cannot change. Regret pulls them backward, making them feel as though they are bound by choices they can no longer undo. They carry a sense of limitation, as if their past defines what is possible for them now. But this belief is rooted in misunderstanding. Buddhism offers a profound shift in perspective through the concept of karma, not as fate, not as punishment, but as a living, fluid force that can be redirected at any moment. Karma is often misunderstood as a fixed system of cause and effect, where past actions determine one's destiny. Many believe that if they have made poor choices or faced difficult circumstances, their future is already set in stone. But karma is not a rigid law of punishment or reward. It is a dynamic process, constantly shaped by present action. Every moment offers the opportunity to shift one's direction. The weight of the past only holds power when one continues to reinforce it in the present. The belief that past actions define the future is itself a form of attachment, an attachment to identity, to regret, to limiting stories about the self. The Buddhist perspective on karma is not about being trapped by past deeds, but about recognizing the power of intentional action in the present. Every thought, word, and decision made in this moment has the power to shift the trajectory of one's life. What happened before is not irrelevant, but it does not have to dictate what comes next. The mind that clings to regret, guilt, or frustration over past choices remains stuck. But the mind that understands that karma is always unfolding realizes that freedom is possible. Many people feel behind in life not because of external circumstances, but because of the way they perceive their past. They look back with resentment, believing they should have made better choices, taken different opportunities, or avoided certain mistakes. But regret is an illusion that distorts reality. The person they were at that time had different understanding, different fears, different knowledge. They made choices based on who they were in that moment. The person looking back now is wiser, more aware, more experienced. It is unfair to judge past actions through the lens of present awareness. Growth is not about wishing the past were different, but about using present wisdom to create a new direction. Karma teaches that nothing is permanent, not suffering, not failure, not identity. A person who has made mistakes is not doomed to repeat them. A person who has faced hardship is not condemned to struggle forever. Life is always changing, and the energy put into the present moment determines the path ahead. The mind, however, resists this truth. It clings to old identities, reinforcing the belief that change is difficult. If someone has spent years feeling lost, they begin to assume that being lost is part of who they are. If someone has experienced failure, they begin to fear that success is out of reach. But these beliefs are just mental habits, patterns of thought that can be broken the moment one sees through them. One of the greatest misconceptions about karma is the belief that it functions like punishment. People assume that if they have struggled, it is because of something they did wrong, that life is simply handing them the consequences of past errors. But karma is not retribution, it is reflection. It mirrors the energy that is put into it. A person who carries resentment will continue to attract experiences that reinforce that emotion. A person who believes they are unworthy will continue to act in ways that strengthen that belief. The cycle continues, not because it is inescapable, but because it is being unconsciously sustained. The moment one stops feeding negative patterns, they begin to dissolve. The past is not shaping the present is shaping the future. Karma is best understood not as a fixed path, but as momentum. Past actions create tendencies, shaping habits and reactions. But just as a river can be redirected with enough effort, so can the trajectory of one's life. No matter how strong a pattern may seem, it is never beyond change. The challenge is that most people are unaware of how deeply they are reinforcing their own karma. They assume that their reactions are automatic, that their emotions are beyond control, that their beliefs are simply facts. But all of these things, reactions, emotions, beliefs, are conditioned responses, built over time. And just as they were built, they can be unbuilt. The way to transform karma is through conscious awareness. When a person begins to observe their own thoughts and actions without judgment, they start to see the patterns that have been shaping their life. They notice how certain emotions trigger predictable responses. They recognize how past conditioning influences present choices. They see the ways in which they have been feeding their own suffering without realizing it. This awareness is the beginning of change. It allows one to stop reacting out of habit and start responding with intention. Many people resist this level of responsibility because it is easier to believe that external forces are to blame for their situation. It is easier to say that life has been unfair, that circumstances have been limiting, that past mistakes have locked them into a certain path. But Buddhism offers a radical shift. No matter what has happened before, the present moment holds the key to transformation. The person who feels powerless is not actually powerless. The person who feels stuck is only stuck in their perception. The ability to change exists the moment one stops waiting for external permission to begin anew. Letting go of past karma does not mean denying past experiences. It means seeing them clearly, learning from them, and then moving forward without carrying unnecessary weight. The mind often resists this because it finds a strange comfort in familiar suffering. If a person has identified with struggle for long enough, the idea of ease feels unfamiliar. If they have viewed themselves as incapable for long enough, confidence feels unnatural. This is why deep change requires patience. The mind must unlearn what it has accepted as truth. One of the most powerful aspects of karma is that it is not just personal. Every action influences others, creating ripples that extend beyond what can be immediately seen. A person who carries resentment unconsciously spreads that energy to those around them. A person who cultivates peace naturally influences others in ways they may never fully realize. This is why transformation is not just about self-improvement. It is about breaking cycles that have been passed and through generations. If someone was raised in an environment of fear, they have the opportunity to break that cycle and cultivate a different energy in their own life. If they have been surrounded by scarcity, they can begin to cultivate generosity. If they have experienced rejection, they can learn to offer acceptance to others. Karma is not fate. It is fluid. The mind that believes it is bound by past mistakes is still living in the past. But the person who sees that each moment is a new beginning is free. They are no longer defined by what has been. They are shaped by what they choose now. The power to redirect life's course is always present. It is not something given by external forces. It is something realized from within. Letting go of the idea that the past has ruined the future is one of the most freeing realizations one can have. No moment is wasted if it leads to deeper awareness. No mistake is permanent if one learns from it. No identity is fixed if one stops reinforcing it. Life is always unfolding, and karma is always shifting. The belief that one's path is set is just another illusion. The present moment is a doorway, and it is always open. The suffering of feeling behind in life often comes from the belief that past choices have set an unchangeable course. But karma is not about being stuck in consequences. It is about seeing that every action, no matter how small, influences the future. The person who begins making conscious choices today will not see immediate transformation, but over time, their entire path will shift. This is how karma works, not as a prison, but as a guide. The energy one puts into the present moment determines what unfolds next. The past does not hold power unless one continues to give it power. The patterns that seem unbreakable are only sustained by repetition. The moment one chooses differently, the future changes. Understanding karma in this way removes the fear of wasted time, of missed opportunities, of irreversible mistakes. Nothing is ever truly lost, because everything is still in motion. The journey does not need to be rewritten. It simply needs to be met with awareness, step by step, knowing that the path forward is not determined by what has been, but by what is chosen now. Recognizing that the past does not define the future brings liberation, but for many, another struggle remains, the feeling of being too late. Even after realizing that karma is fluid and every action in the present can reshape the trajectory of life, a quiet voice lingers, whispering that it should have happened sooner. The mind clings to lost time, to opportunities that seem to have slipped away, to the belief that others are ahead, and that whatever was meant to be has already passed. This fear of being too late is one of the deepest sources of suffering, not because time is actually running out, but because the mind believes it is. Buddhism teaches that this fear is not rooted in reality, but in attachment to a false idea of time. The belief that there is a perfect timeline for life creates unnecessary suffering. It places an invisible weight on every decision, turning reflection into regret and growth into guilt. The mind fixates on all the years that have gone by, on all the moments that could have been different, as if time itself is something that must be controlled. But Time is not something that is lost. It is something that is lived. The fear of being too late is not about time at all. It is about judgment. It is about the way the mind holds itself to unrealistic expectations and punishes itself for not being where it thinks it should be. The only way to dissolve this suffering is through self-compassion. Metta, or loving kindness, is one of the most powerful practices in Buddhism, and it begins with oneself. The mind that is constantly measuring, criticizing, and comparing itself to others will always find reasons to feel inadequate. It will always see where it could have done better, where it could have been smarter, where it could have acted sooner. But this perspective is based on an illusion. The illusion that life should have unfolded differently than it did. In reality, every experience, every delay, every perceived mistake has played a role in shaping understanding. The mind that clings to regret does not see the wisdom that has been gained along the way. Self-compassion is not about making excuses or denying responsibility. It is about seeing oneself with the same kindness that would be given to a friend. If another person came with the same worries, saying they feel too late, that they regret the years wasted, that they wish they had started sooner, the response would not be judgment. It would be gentle understanding. It would be encouragement. Yet when it comes to oneself, the mind turns harsh. It insists that it should have done better, that it should be somewhere else by now. But this self-judgment is not truth. It is conditioning. It is the habit of seeing oneself through a lens of criticism rather than care. Many people believe that self-compassion is weakness, that being too kind to oneself will lead to complacency or stagnation. But the opposite is true. Growth does not come from self-punishment. It comes from self-understanding. A person who constantly criticizes themselves will hesitate to take action, paralyzed by fear of failure. But a person who treats themselves with kindness will have the courage to move forward, knowing that mistakes are not evidence of unworthiness, but part of the path. The fear of being too late is rooted in comparison. It arises because the mind looks at others and assumes they have done things correctly while the self has fallen behind. But no one is truly ahead or behind. Everyone is on their own path, moving through their own lessons at their own pace. What appears as progress on the outside does not always reflect inner peace. Many who seem ahead are struggling with battles unseen. Many who appear successful are still searching for meaning. Life does not follow a single script. The mind that releases the need to compare also releases the fear of being too late. Metta practice teaches that kindness toward oneself is not separate from kindness toward others. The way one treats their own thoughts, their own past, their own regrets, shapes the way they interact with the world. If one is harsh with themselves, they will be harsh with others. If one is patient with themselves, they will naturally be more patient with others. This is why self-compassion is not selfish. It is the foundation of a peaceful mind, and a peaceful mind brings more peace to those around it. Buddhism teaches that suffering arises from attachment, and one of the deepest attachments is to self-judgment. The mind clings to old versions of itself, to past mistakes, to the idea that it should have been different. But this clinging does not change the past. It only prolongs suffering. Letting go does not mean forgetting. It means accepting. It means recognizing that the past does not need to be rewritten in order for the future to be different. The fear of being too late often disguises itself as motivation. It pushes people to act out of desperation, to rush into decisions, to chase goals for the sake of proving they can still catch up. But rushed action doesn't lead to wisdom. It leads to burnout, anxiety, and more suffering. True movement forward comes from a place of clarity, and clarity arises from inner kindness. When one stops fighting against the past and instead meets themselves with gentleness, the path forward becomes clearer. There is no longer a need to prove anything. There is only the next step, taken with presence. Loving kindness practice involves directing warmth and goodwill toward oneself, not just in thought, but in feeling. Many struggle with this because their inner dialogue has been shaped by years of criticism. The habit of self-judgment is deep, reinforced by cultural expectations, by family conditioning, by the belief that self-worth is something to be earned. But worth is not conditional. It does not depend on how much has been achieved or how well one has kept pace with others. It exists naturally, simply by being. Practicing self-compassion does not mean ignoring flaws. It means acknowledging them without attaching to them. It means recognizing that imperfection is part of being human. The mind that clings to an idealized version of itself suffers because it is constantly measuring reality against an illusion. The moment one accepts that they are already enough, exactly as they are, the weight of being too late begins to dissolve. Fear of lost time is only a problem when one believes that happiness was meant to happen under different conditions. But happiness is not in the past, nor is it waiting in the future. It is always available in the present, obscured only by the mind's insistence that something is missing. When one stops measuring life against imagined timelines, they begin to see the richness of what is already here. Many believe that regret is useful, that it helps prevent future mistakes. But regret, when held too tightly, only creates more suffering. Reflection is valuable, but dwelling on what should have been is wasted energy. The present moment is always the point of power. The person who stops punishing themselves for the past will move forward with far more clarity than the person who carries self-reproach like a burden. Metta is not just a concept. It is a practice. It is something that must be cultivated again and again until it becomes the natural way of relating to oneself. Every time the mind begins to spiral into thoughts of being too late, of having wasted years, of not being enough, there is an opportunity to shift. There is an opportunity to replace judgment with kindness, criticism with understanding. Over time, this practice rewires the way one sees themselves. It replaces the habit of regret with the habit of presence. It transforms suffering into peace. Letting go of the fear of being too late does not mean ignoring goals or abandoning dreams. It means pursuing them without the weight of self-judgment. It means allowing life to unfold without the constant thought that it should have happened differently. It means trusting that where one is right now is exactly where they need to be. The suffering of feeling behind is not about time. It is about perspective. When one stops seeing life as something that should have followed a different course and instead embraces it as it is, the feeling of being too late disappears. What remains is the freedom to begin, not from a place of regret, but from a place of deep acceptance. The practice of self-compassion is not indulgence. It is the foundation of transformation. A mind at war with itself cannot move forward with peace. A mind that meets itself with kindness will always find the strength to continue. The past does not define the future. Time is not running out. The only thing that ever truly matters is how one meets this moment, with judgment or with love. The choice is always present, and in that choice, there is always freedom. Meeting oneself with compassion dissolves the illusion of being too late, yet another layer of suffering remains, the pressure to conform to an invisible timeline set by society. Even after releasing self-judgment, the mind still clings to expectations imposed from the outside. The belief that success, happiness and fulfillment must come in a specific order by a certain age creates unnecessary suffering. This timeline is not natural. It is not universal. It is a construct shaped by cultural conditioning, reinforced by comparison, and driven by the ego's need for validation. Buddhism offers a radical freedom from this burden through the concept of anatta, or non-self. The belief in a fixed identity, the idea of a permanent separate self that must achieve specific things to be complete, is one of the deepest illusions. The ego, which constructs a story of who one is and how life should unfold, is the very thing that fuels suffering. Letting go of this story is not a loss. It is liberation. It removes the pressure to meet external expectations and allows life to unfold naturally, without fear of judgment or failure. Society operates on expectations. People are taught that their worth is measured by milestones, education, career, relationships, status. There is an unspoken pressure to follow this path in a linear way. Those who deviate, who take longer, who choose differently, often feel out of place. They believe they are behind. But behind what? The standard they compare themselves to is arbitrary. It was created by collective conditioning, not by truth. Different cultures have different expectations. Different eras have different values. What is seen as success in one place is meaningless in another. The fear of falling behind is not based on reality, but on attachment to an illusion of how life should be. Anatta teaches that the self is not fixed. It is not a solid entity moving through life with a single purpose. It is fluid, changing with each experience. The idea that one must fit into a predetermined mold ignores this truth. People cling to identities, student, professional, spouse, parent, as if these labels define them. But these roles are temporary. They shift, evolve, and sometimes disappear. The suffering of feeling inadequate arises when one attaches too strongly to these roles, believing that deviation from them is failure. Letting go of the ego's timeline does not mean abandoning goals. It means seeing that goals are not tied to identity. A person is not less because they have not achieved what others expect. A person is not more because they meet societal standards. These measures are illusions. Real fulfillment does not come from meeting expectations. It comes from alignment with one's true nature, which is beyond labels, beyond achievement, beyond the constant striving for validation. The ego fears irrelevance. It clings to status, to reputation, to the belief that what others think determines worth. This fear is what keeps people trapped in societal expectations. They pursue things they do not truly desire, not because they bring meaning, but because they fear judgment. They rush through life, ticking boxes, proving themselves, only to feel empty once they arrive. The anxiety of never doing enough, never being enough, is fueled by attachment to the image the ego constructs. Anatta dissolves this illusion by revealing that there is no fixed self to protect, no permanent identity to defend. The idea that one must accomplish certain things by a certain age assumes a stable, unchanging self. But there is no such self. What one values today may change tomorrow. What seems urgent now may be meaningless later. The more tightly one grips an identity, the more suffering arises when life inevitably changes. Freedom comes when one stops trying to control the story and instead allows life to unfold without resistance. Comparison is one of the greatest obstacles to peace. The mind constantly measures itself against others, believing that worth is relative. But every life path is different. Every person carries unique experiences, challenges, and lessons. There's no single way to live. The pressure to keep up is meaningless when seen from a wider perspective. The sun does not rush to rise. The river does not force its flow. Nature moves in its own rhythm, without worry, without comparison. Human life is no different. Letting go of the ego's timeline does not mean rejecting ambition. It means detaching from the belief that ambition defines identity. One can strive for excellence without being consumed by it. One can pursue goals without believing that success determines worth. The problem is not effort, but attachment. When ambition is driven by fear, fear of being left behind, fear of not being enough, it leads to exhaustion and dissatisfaction. When ambition is guided by inner clarity, without the need for validation, it becomes a source of joy rather than suffering. People often resist detaching from the ego's timeline because they fear losing direction. If there is no set path, no predefined structure, then what guides life? But letting go does not mean drifting aimlessly. It means moving with awareness rather than compulsion. Instead of being controlled by external pressures, one acts from a place of inner truth. Instead of chasing approval, one follows what is meaningful. The difference is not in action, but in intention. A person who is driven by fear and comparison will always feel behind. A person who is guided by authenticity will always be exactly where they need to be. The suffering of feeling behind is a symptom of ego identification. It arises when life is measured by artificial standards rather than by direct experience. A child does not ask whether they are behind in learning to walk. They simply take each step as it comes. A tree does not question whether it is growing fast enough. It simply grows. This is how life moves when it is not burdened by expectation. The moment one stops asking whether they are ahead or behind, the illusion dissolves. There is only the present moment, unfolding as it must. Many people spend their entire lives trapped in a cycle of proving themselves. They chase things they do not truly want, fearing that if they do not, they will be seen as failures. But failure, as defined by society, is just another illusion. A person who does not fit into conventional success is not lesser. A person who chooses a slower path, a different direction, is not lost. They are simply moving according to their own rhythm. The idea that everyone must follow the same path ignores the vast complexity of human experience. Buddhism teaches that attachment to identity is one of the greatest sources of suffering. The ego constructs a version of the self and then spends a lifetime defending it. But identity is fragile. It shifts with time, with experience, with circumstances. When one realizes that they are not bound by any single version of themselves, they become free. They can change, adapt, grow without fear of failure. They no longer need to prove anything, because there is no fixed self to prove anything to. Letting go of the ego's timeline does not mean giving up on life. It means living without fear of being judged for doing things differently. It means moving without the burden of comparison. It means understanding that success is not measured by external standards, but by inner peace. A person who has found this peace, who no longer chases validation, radiates a quiet confidence. They do not need to be recognized because they are already whole. The suffering of feeling behind exists only in the mind. It is created by attachment to an idea of how life should be. When this idea is released, suffering disappears. What remains is freedom, the ability to move, to grow, to experience without fear. The present moment is not a checkpoint in a race. It is not a test of progress. It is life itself, unfolding as it must. The more one tries to control it, the more suffering arises. The more one allows it to be as it is, the more peace they find. Anatta teaches that there is no fixed self to protect, no permanent version of oneself to uphold. The mind resists this truth because it finds comfort in certainty. But real peace does not come from certainty. It comes from trust. Trust that life is not something to be mastered, but something to be lived. Trust that there is no single way to be. Trust that letting go is not losing control, but gaining freedom. The moment this truth is seen clearly, the fear of being behind disappears. The need to compare vanishes. What remains is a quiet knowing. There is nothing to prove, nothing to chase, nothing to become. There is only this moment, exactly as it is, and it is enough. Releasing attachment to external timelines dissolves the weight of comparison, but another deeply ingrained belief remains. The idea that life moves in a straight line, that progress is measured in clear steps, and that any deviation from the expected path means starting over. The fear of having to begin again paralyzes many, creating hesitation, regret, and self-doubt. It convinces people that their efforts have been wasted, that time has been lost, and that their mistakes have set them back. But this belief is built on a false premise. Buddhism challenges the illusion of linear progress, revealing that nothing is ever truly lost, and no one ever truly starts over. The mind tends to categorize experiences in absolute terms: success or failure, forward movement or backward steps, progress or stagnation. It constructs a rigid map of how life should unfold, assuming that each milestone must lead smoothly to the next. When reality does not match these expectations, suffering arises. If a goal is not reached in time, if a path is interrupted, if circumstances change unexpectedly, the mind assumes that progress has been erased. But this is an illusion. No experience is ever undone. No lesson is ever lost. The journey continues, even when it appears to be standing still. The concept of anicca, or impermanence, teaches that everything is in motion. Life is not a series of fixed checkpoints, but a fluid unfolding. The idea of starting over assumes that something has been reset, that what was before has disappeared. But nothing disappears. Every moment carries forward the weight of experience, the depth of understanding, and the unseen growth that has taken place. Even in what seems like failure, something has shifted. Even in what appears to be regression, wisdom has accumulated. The path does not restart, it transforms. The illusion of linear progress is deeply conditioned. Society reinforces the idea that success follows a clear trajectory: education, career advancement, relationships, financial stability. When life deviates from this pattern, the mind panics. It assumes that setbacks mean returning to square one, as if everything gained before has been erased. But experience is not like a staircase that can be fallen down. It is more like a river, always flowing, always carrying forward the past, even when it seems to change direction. One of the greatest causes of suffering is the belief that a wrong turn requires beginning again. This belief traps people in hesitation, making them afraid to take risks or explore new paths. They fear that if they step away from what they have built, all will be lost. But nothing is lost. Every skill developed, every insight gained, every challenge endured continues to shape the present. The lessons remain, even when the external structures change. A person who shifts careers does not discard the wisdom of their past work. A person who ends a relationship does not erase the depth of what was learned. A person who takes a different path in life does not abandon everything that came before. The fear of starting over is not fear of effort, it is fear of losing meaning. But meaning is never lost, it simply evolves. The mind fixates on destinations, believing that once a goal is reached, stability follows. But goals are temporary. Success is not a permanent state. No matter how much is achieved, circumstances will continue to shift. The belief that progress must always move forward in a straight line ignores the reality of impermanence. The person who resists this truth will suffer when life inevitably disrupts their plans. The person who embraces it will move with ease, knowing that no path is wasted, no detour is meaningless, and no effort disappears. People often resist change because they fear the loss of identity. They believe that if they take a different direction, they will become someone else, that everything they have built will be forgotten. But identity is not fixed. The person one was 10 years ago is not the person they are today. Growth is not a single path, but a constant unfolding. The need to define oneself through external achievements creates the illusion that progress is measurable. But real progress is not something that can be counted. It is not defined by titles, wealth, or status. It is found in awareness, in the deepening of understanding, in the ability to move through life without fear of change. The illusion of starting over creates unnecessary suffering. It convinces people that they have fallen behind, that they must catch up, that they have wasted time. But time is not wasted when it is lived fully. Every experience, even those that seem like mistakes, contribute to growth. The mind that regrets the past does not see that even in its difficulties, something valuable was gained. The wisdom that exists now would not exist without everything that came before. The fear of beginning again is only fear of the unknown. But the unknown is always present. It is not a reset. It is simply the next step. Buddhism teaches that attachment to fixed outcomes creates suffering. The desire for certainty, for a predictable path, leads to anxiety. The moment something disrupts expectations, the mind resists, struggling against reality. But reality does not move in a straight line. It moves in waves, in cycles, in rhythms beyond human control. The belief that life must be linear is what creates distress. The truth is that no one starts over because no moment is disconnected from the ones before it. Every effort remains. Every lesson continues. Every shift in direction is still movement. One of the greatest illusions is that others are progressing while one is falling behind. The mind assumes that those who seem to be on a steady path are moving forward while those who experience setbacks are stuck. But progress is not visible from the outside. A person who appears successful may be internally lost. A person who seems to have stability may feel deeply unfulfilled. True growth happens within. It is not measured by society's standards, but by the clarity and peace one carries. The person who has released attachment to external validation is never behind. They move according to their own rhythm, without fear of what others may perceive. Many believe that if they had made different choices, they would be further ahead. They regret decisions, believing they must now make up for lost time. But no time is lost. Every choice made was the only choice that could have been made in that moment, given the understanding that existed then. The mind that fixates on alternate possibilities creates suffering by rejecting the present. But the present is all there is. The belief that things should have unfolded differently ignores the fact that even the perceived detours were part of the journey. The idea of a fresh start is appealing because it suggests that the past can be erased, that mistakes can be undone. But nothing needs to be undone. The desire to wipe away the past comes from resistance, from the belief that something went wrong. But what if nothing went wrong? What if every experience, even the painful ones, were necessary for the understanding that exists now? The mind that stops labeling the past as failure is the mind that is free. There is no need to start over, only to continue. Progress is non-linear because life itself is non-linear. Nature does not move in straight lines. Seasons cycle, tides rise and fall, growth happens in phases. Human life follows the same pattern. There are moments of expansion and moments of retreat. There are times of clarity and times of uncertainty, but none of these are steps backward. They are simply different parts of the unfolding process. The fear of starting over is only fear of letting go. But letting go does not mean losing. It means moving without resistance. Buddhism teaches that clinging to the idea of a perfect path creates suffering. The moment one releases this expectation, peace arises. There is no need to compare. There is no need to regret. There is no need to measure life against a false timeline. What matters is not whether one has followed a straight path, but whether one has walked with awareness. The past does not need to be fixed. The future does not need to be controlled. The only thing that matters is how one meets the present, knowing that nothing has been wasted, nothing has been lost, and nothing ever truly begins again. It only continues exactly as it should. Letting go of the illusion of starting over dissolves the fear of wasted time, but another deep struggle remains, the relentless feeling of being left behind. Even after accepting that life is not a straight path, the mind continues to compare, to measure, to believe that others are ahead while it remains stuck. The weight of unfulfilled expectations, the anxiety of falling short, the quiet panic that time is slipping away, all of it builds a sense of inadequacy. But this suffering does not come from reality. It comes from being disconnected from the present moment. Buddhism offers a profound cure for this suffering: mindfulness. Not as a vague idea, not as a practice limited to meditation, but as a way of living, an approach to every moment that dissolves the illusion of falling behind. The mind that is fully present does not dwell in past regrets or future fears. It does not measure itself against timelines or compare itself to others. It does not chase after what is missing because it sees that nothing is missing. It understands that life is not a race, but an unfolding, moment by moment. The feeling of being left behind arises from living in the mind rather than in reality. The mind is constantly projecting forward, worrying about what has not yet happened. It is constantly looking back, analyzing what could have been done differently. It is rarely here, in the now, and yet reality only exists in this moment. The future is a thought. The past is a memory. Neither exist outside of the mind. The suffering of feeling behind is not happening in the present. It is happening in the mind's idea of time. Mindfulness does not mean ignoring the future or neglecting responsibilities. It means engaging fully with what is happening now instead of being consumed by what should be happening. The belief that life is elsewhere, that happiness will come later, that success is in the future, creates endless dissatisfaction. But nothing exists outside of this moment. The more the mind resists this truth, the more it suffers. The more it embraces presence, the more it finds peace. The illusion of being left behind is rooted in comparison. The mind constantly measures progress against others, believing that someone else's timeline is the standard. But comparison is never accurate. It is based on assumptions, on external appearances, on stories the mind creates. No one's life is as simple as it looks from the outside. The person who seems ahead may be struggling with invisible burdens. The person who appears to have everything may feel lost. Everyone is navigating their own lessons. The suffering of comparison disappears when the mind stops looking outward and starts being fully where it is. The mind resists mindfulness because it has been conditioned to seek fulfillment elsewhere. It believes that if it stops striving, if it stops planning, if it stops thinking ahead, it will fall even further behind. But mindfulness is not about passivity. It is not about abandoning ambition. It is about moving with clarity rather than fear. The person who is fully present does not waste energy worrying about whether they are keeping up. They act from a place of awareness, making choices with intention rather than anxiety. The belief that something is missing fuels the feeling of being left behind. The mind creates images of where it should be, convincing itself that happiness is elsewhere. But these images are projections. They are not reality. The present moment, exactly as it is, holds everything needed for peace. The suffering of inadequacy disappears when the mind stops chasing after a different version of life and starts fully engaging with what is here. Mindfulness does not mean suppressing thoughts or emotions. It means seeing them clearly, without attachment. The feeling of being left behind is just that, a feeling. It is not truth. It is not evidence of failure. It is a passing thought, created by mental habits, reinforced by years of conditioning. When seen with awareness, it loses its power. It is no longer something to believe in. It is just another fluctuation of the mind, like a cloud moving across the sky. The habit of rushing, of feeling pressured to achieve more, is deeply ingrained. It makes people believe that slowing down means falling behind. But slowing down is not stagnation. It is presence. It is the ability to be fully engaged with life instead of racing through it. A person who rushes through a meal does not taste it. A person who hurries through an experience does not feel it. A person who is always thinking about the future is not living. The fear of falling behind keeps people from realizing that they have never truly been here. One of the greatest gifts of mindfulness is that it removes the need to prove anything. A person who is present does not need validation. They do not need to check their progress against others. They do not need to constantly measure whether they are ahead or behind. They are simply here, doing what needs to be done, without the weight of comparison. This is freedom. The mind that stops resisting the present moment is no longer trapped in the illusion of lacking something. Mindfulness teaches that success is not a destination. Happiness is not something to be reached. Peace is not waiting in the future. Everything one seeks is already here, obscured only by the mind's insistence that it must be found elsewhere. The feeling of being left behind dissolves when one stops believing that life should be different than it is. When one stops chasing, what was being sought is revealed. It was never missing. It was only overlooked. The suffering of feeling behind is self-created. It is not a fact. It is a perspective. The person who feels behind is caught in a mental story, not in reality. The way out of this suffering is not to catch up, but to wake up. It is to see that there is no race, no finish line, no perfect timeline to follow. Life is not about being ahead or behind. It is about being. When this truth is fully realized, the illusion disappears. What remains is presence, clarity, and the deep peace of knowing that nothing was ever missing. The mind that is fully here does not suffer over where it should be. It does not fear time running out. It does not measure itself against external expectations. It simply exists, awake and engaged, responding to life as it unfolds. This is the ultimate cure for feeling left behind. It is not about doing more. It is not about achieving faster. It is about seeing clearly that there is nothing to chase, nothing to prove, nothing to fear. The only thing that ever needed to happen is happening now, and in this moment, all is complete. Letting go of the feeling of being left behind brings clarity, but another deeply ingrained habit remains: the belief that the harder one pushes, the faster they will arrive. The mind is conditioned to equate effort with success, to believe that struggle is proof of progress, that anything worth having must be fought for. This belief creates exhaustion, frustration, and resistance. It convinces people that if they are not constantly forcing themselves forward, they are falling behind. But Buddhism and Taoism both reveal a deeper truth. Real progress does not come from force. It comes from flow. The concept of Wu Wei, or effortless action, teaches that forcing progress is the very thing that prevents it. Struggle arises when the mind resists reality, when it fights against the natural rhythm of life. People chase outcomes, believing that if they do not push, they will never get what they want. But pushing harder does not always bring results. In many cases, it creates more obstacles. A person who forces their way through a situation often creates unnecessary friction. A person who moves in harmony with circumstances, who acts without attachment, finds that things unfold with ease. Effortless action is not laziness. It is not inaction. It is acting without resistance, without desperation, without the grasping that leads to suffering. The mind assumes that slowing down, letting go, and allowing things to unfold means giving up control. But control itself is an illusion. No matter how much effort is applied, some things will not happen on demand. Growth doesn't occur by force. A tree doesn't stretch itself taller through effort. A river doesn't force itself to flow. Nature moves in alignment with what is. Human life is no different. The person who understands this moves with clarity rather than tension. They act when action is needed, rest when rest is necessary, and do not waste energy forcing what does not move. Wu Wei does not mean passivity. It does not mean abandoning ambition. It means aligning with the natural current rather than swimming against it. A person who forces relationships, careers, or personal growth to happen faster than their natural rhythm will feel exhausted and unfulfilled. But a person who moves in harmony with life will find that everything unfolds in its own time. Forcing things to happen is rooted in fear. The fear of lack, the fear of failure, the fear that life will not provide unless it is controlled. But fear creates resistance, and resistance prevents flow. When one stops forcing, things begin to move naturally. Many people believe that suffering is necessary for success. They believe that struggle is proof of effort, but suffering does not guarantee progress. It often signals misalignment. The belief that one must endure constant stress to achieve something only reinforces unnecessary pain. Success does not require exhaustion. It requires clarity. Clarity comes when one is not blinded by the need to prove themselves, when one acts with awareness rather than panic. A person who operates from fear is never at peace, no matter how much they achieve. A person who moves with ease is fulfilled, regardless of what they gain. Forcing outcomes creates pressure. Pressure creates stress. Stress clouds judgment. A person who is constantly pushing forward is not moving with wisdom. They are reacting out of anxiety. They are chasing something that will never feel like enough. The moment one steps back, releases attachment, and acts from a place of presence, life begins to unfold differently. The energy of desperation is replaced with the energy of trust. When one stops grasping, things come more naturally. Wu Wei is not about doing nothing. It is about acting with the least resistance possible. It is about understanding that some things require patience, that timing matters, that the harder one pushes, the more resistance they create. A person who constantly forces results becomes rigid. A person who moves with awareness remains adaptable. Rigidity breaks under pressure. Flexibility flows around obstacles. The strongest trees are those that bend with the wind. The most resilient people are those who know when to act and when to wait. One of the greatest misconceptions about effort is that more of it always leads to better results. But pushing beyond what is natural often leads to burnout. A person who forces themselves to work without rest will not perform better. A person who forces relationships will not build deeper connections. A person who forces personal growth will not evolve faster. True transformation happens in its own time. Rushing does not accelerate it. It only makes the journey more difficult. Effortless action is not about abandoning goals. It is about moving with wisdom instead of fear. A person who trusts the process does not need to panic. They do not rush decisions. They do not force opportunities. They recognize when it's time to act and when it's time to allow things to unfold. This is not weakness. It is mastery. It is the ability to see clearly rather than react impulsively. The person who is always chasing is never truly present. The person who is aligned with the moment finds that everything happens at the right time. Resistance creates struggle. Acceptance creates ease. When one stops fighting against reality, life becomes lighter. The mind that is always trying to control outcomes suffers the most. The mind that trusts the unfolding of life moves without unnecessary pain. This does not mean giving up on dreams. It means holding them lightly. It means working toward them without becoming consumed by them. It means understanding that effort is valuable, but force is counterproductive. Fear convinces people that without struggle, nothing will be achieved. But the greatest breakthroughs often come in moments of stillness. The best ideas emerge not in stress, but in calm. The deepest insights arise not in urgency, but in quiet. When the mind is too fixated on outcomes, it cannot see clearly. When it is at ease, solutions come naturally. Wu Wei teaches that acting from a place of balance brings more than acting from a place of desperation. A person who forces results might succeed temporarily, but will always feel unsettled. A person who moves with effortless action finds that success is not only external, but internal. Many resist this idea because they equate ease with complacency, but there is a difference between doing nothing and doing what is needed without excess struggle. Effort does not have to be painful. It does not have to be exhausting. It does not have to come from a place of self-doubt. The best athletes do not force their movements. They move with precision and flow. The best musicians do not strain. They let the music move through them. The most effective leaders do not control. They guide with wisdom. The mind that understands this principle is no longer caught in the trap of believing that more struggle equals more success. Forcing things to happen creates imbalance. A person who constantly pushes beyond their limits will eventually collapse. A person who understands their natural rhythm will sustain their efforts for longer. It is not about working harder. It is about working with awareness. The idea that one must prove their worth through exhaustion is a lie created by fear. Worth is not proven. It is realized. The person who knows their worth does not need to fight for it. They move with confidence, knowing that what is meant for them will come. They act when action is needed, but they do not force what is not ready. Wu Wei is the art of moving in harmony with life rather than against it. It is the wisdom of knowing when to step forward and when to step back. It is the practice of trusting that things will unfold as they should. It is the understanding that struggle is often a sign of misalignment. When one stops resisting, when one stops trying to force outcomes, when one simply moves with what is, everything becomes lighter. The fear of not doing enough fades. The need to prove disappears. What remains is clarity, peace, and the effortless unfolding of life as it was always meant to be. Letting go of control and embracing the flow of life dissolves much of the struggle, but another weight lingers: regret. Even after surrendering to effortless action, the mind still returns to the past, replaying mistakes, reliving decisions, and questioning whether things could have been different. Regret is one of the most persistent forms of suffering, trapping people in what-ifs and should-haves, making peace feel unreachable. Buddhist monks understand that regret is not a reflection of truth, but a creation of the mind. It arises not from the past itself, but from attachment to it. The practice of self-forgiveness and detachment from past mistakes is a path to freedom, not just for monks, but for anyone willing to let go. Regret is the belief that the past should have been different. It assumes that another choice, another action, another moment of awareness would have led to a better outcome. But the past cannot be changed. No amount of reflection can undo what has already happened. The suffering of regret does not come from events themselves, but from resistance to what is. The mind clings to its mistakes, refusing to accept them as part of the journey. But acceptance does not mean approval. It does not mean justifying harm or ignoring consequences. It means recognizing that what happened could not have happened any other way. The person who made those choices in the past was acting from their level of understanding at the time. Regret arises because the present self looks back with greater awareness, forgetting that this awareness did not exist before. Buddhist monks practice detachment from regret by understanding anicca, impermanence. Everything changes, including perception. The mind that condemns the past is not the same mind that existed when those choices were made. Clinging to regret is like punishing oneself for not knowing what could only be learned through experience. Growth is only possible because mistakes happened. The wisdom that exists now was shaped by what came before. Without those moments, without those lessons, there would be no awareness of what is different now. Regret assumes that a perfect path existed, but perfection is an illusion. There was never a way to avoid all mistakes, because learning requires them. Forgiving oneself is not an act of ignoring consequences. It is an act of releasing self-punishment. The mind that holds on to regret believes that suffering is necessary, that guilt proves something, that carrying the weight of past mistakes somehow makes up for them. But guilt does not change the past. It only burdens the present. Buddhist monks understand that true responsibility is not in endlessly dwelling on what was, but in choosing the right action now. The present moment is the only place where change is possible. Regret keeps people stuck in a time that no longer exists, preventing them from acting with clarity in the present. The Buddhist practice of metta, loving kindness, teaches that the same compassion extended to others must also be given to oneself. Many find it easy to forgive others, but impossible to forgive themselves. They believe they're unworthy, that their mistakes define them, that their past has permanently marked them. But the self is not fixed. It is always changing. No one is the same person they were years ago. Holding on to regret is like defining oneself by an old version that no longer exists. The present self has the choice to act differently, to grow, to embody wisdom, but it cannot do this while clinging to self-condemnation. The mind that refuses to forgive itself is like a bird refusing to fly because it once fell. Regret is tied to identity. People believe that their past defines them, that mistakes determine their worth, that they are forever bound to the choices they have made. But identity is not fixed. The past does not dictate the future unless one allows it to. Buddhist monks understand that the self is not something solid. It is fluid, always evolving. The person who made those mistakes is gone. The person who exists now is different. Clinging to past mistakes is like carrying the weight of a life that no longer exists. The moment one lets go, the weight disappears. Many resist self-forgiveness because they believe it means escaping responsibility. But responsibility is not about endless self-punishment. It is about choosing the right action now. Regret keeps people in a cycle of guilt, preventing them from moving forward with clarity. Forgiving oneself is not about erasing consequences. It is about acknowledging what happened, learning from it, and choosing to act differently. The past cannot be fixed, but the present can be lived with awareness. A person who releases regret is not avoiding responsibility. They are taking the deepest responsibility by choosing to live fully instead of remaining trapped in the past. The suffering of regret comes from attachment to a past self, to an idealized version of how things should have gone, to the belief that mistakes erase worth. But worth is not something that can be lost. It is not measured by perfection. A child who falls while learning to walk is not seen as a failure. Growth requires stumbling. Regret assumes that there was a way to learn without mistakes, but this is not how life unfolds. The monks who release regret do so by recognizing that suffering over the past does not change it. It only wastes the present. The real transformation happens not by wishing the past had been different, but by using its lessons to live with greater wisdom now. Holding on to regret often comes from the belief that it is too late to change, that mistakes have permanently shaped reality. But nothing is permanent. Anika reminds that all things shift. No matter what has happened, the present remains open. The past is only as limiting as the mind allows it to be. Buddhist monks do not see their past errors as chains. They see them as teachers. The lessons are carried forward, but the weight is not. The difference between regret and wisdom is attachment. Regret clings to what cannot be changed. Wisdom carries forward what was learned and moves lightly. Forgiving oneself is an act of courage. It requires releasing the comfort of self-blame, stepping beyond the familiar pain of regret, and choosing to see the past differently. Many hold on to regret because it is familiar. It becomes part of identity. The mind repeats its mistakes like a story that defines who they are. But stories can be rewritten. The past does not need to be denied, but it does not need to be a prison. Buddhist monks do not ignore their pasts. They acknowledge them fully, learn from them, and then let them go. They do not carry the weight into the present because they understand that the present is the only moment that matters. Some believe that without regret, they will repeat their mistakes, that releasing guilt will make them careless. But true awareness does not come from guilt. It comes from clarity. A person who is weighed down by regret is not thinking clearly. They are reacting to self-judgment rather than seeing what is. A person who has forgiven themselves can move with wisdom, choosing actions not out of fear, but out of understanding. Buddhist monks cultivate this clarity by not attaching to the past, by seeing mistakes not as permanent failures, but as part of the unfolding process of growth. Regret is like carrying a heavy stone. It serves no purpose but weighs down every step. The moment it is put down, movement becomes free. The mind resists this because it believes suffering is necessary, that to forgive is to forget. But true forgiveness is not forgetting. It is remembering without suffering. It is seeing the past clearly, understanding what was learned, and moving forward without the weight of self-punishment. Letting go of regret does not mean denying responsibility. It means understanding that responsibility is not about suffering, it is about action. The past cannot be undone, but the future is shaped by the choices made now. The mind that lets go of regret moves freely. It is not burdened by guilt or fear. It is open to what is possible rather than trapped in what was lost. Buddhist monks do not waste energy on what cannot be changed. They focus on what can be done now. This is not avoidance. It is wisdom. Regret is a form of resistance. It fights reality, refusing to accept what already is. But resistance does not change the past. It only creates suffering in the present. The person who releases regret is not giving up. They are waking up. They are seeing that clinging to past mistakes does nothing but keep them stuck. The only way forward is through acceptance, not through justification, not through denial, but through understanding. The past is not a prison. It is a teacher. The lessons remain, but the suffering does not have to. The mind that holds on to regret is like a clenched fist. The tighter it grips, the more pain it creates. The moment it opens, relief comes. Buddhist monks do not hold on to what cannot be changed. They learn, they grow, they move forward. And in doing so, they find freedom, not because their past was perfect, but because they no longer let it define them. Letting go of regret dissolves the weight of the past, but another question remains. How can one trust that they are on the right path? Even after releasing self-blame, the mind still lingers in doubt, questioning whether life is unfolding as it should. There is an underlying fear that something has been missed, that a wrong turn has led to unnecessary suffering, that life is not where it is supposed to be. The mind seeks reassurance, a guarantee that everything is happening for a reason. But Buddhism teaches that such certainty is not necessary. Life unfolds according to Dharma, not as fate, not as a rigid plan, but as the natural unfolding of existence. Trusting Dharma is not about knowing the future. It is about recognizing that the present moment is exactly where one is meant to be. The mind is conditioned to believe that life must follow a specific order. It assumes that there is a right way and a wrong way, a path that leads to success and a path that leads to failure. But this is a limited way of seeing. The concept of Dharma teaches that every experience, every challenge, every moment of doubt is part of a larger unfolding. Nothing is outside of this. Even the mistakes, the detours, the struggles, they are not separate from the path. They are the path. The belief that life has gone off track assumes that there was ever a single correct track to begin with. But life does not unfold in straight lines. It moves according to causes and conditions, shifting in ways beyond personal control. The suffering of doubt arises when one resists this truth, believing that things should be different than they are. Trusting that one is exactly where they need to be does not mean passivity. It does not mean abandoning effort or surrendering to helplessness. It means understanding that every moment holds purpose, even when it is unclear. Doubt arises from the mind's desire for certainty. It wants proof that everything is leading somewhere meaningful. But meaning is not something that exists outside of the present. It is not something that will arrive one day as a reward for struggle. It is something that is uncovered through awareness, through seeing the depth in what is already here. The belief that life should be different blinds one to the lessons, the opportunities, and the wisdom of the present. Dharma is not about waiting for a grand realization. It is not about finding a predetermined destiny. It is about living with integrity, with presence, with the understanding that each moment is a part of the whole. Many people suffer because they feel disconnected from purpose. They believe that purpose is something to be found, as if it exists somewhere outside of them. But Dharma is not discovered, it is lived. It is not a distant goal. It is the way one moves through life now. The suffering of feeling lost comes from looking too far ahead, from believing that something is missing, from forgetting that purpose is not a destination, but a way of being. Doubt arises when the mind believes that it should have figured everything out by now. It assumes that by a certain age, by a certain stage, clarity should have arrived. But clarity is not something that comes all at once. It reveals itself gradually, through action, through awareness, through engagement with life as it is. The need for certainty, for a perfect plan, is what prevents clarity. The person who waits for life to make sense before they trust it will never feel at peace. The person who trusts that even the unknown is part of the unfolding will always be at ease. Trusting Dharma means letting go of the need to see the entire path before taking a step. There is a deep fear that if life is accepted as it is, nothing will change. That trust means stagnation. But trusting Dharma does not mean inaction. It means moving with awareness rather than resistance. It means making choices with clarity rather than fear. The person who trusts their path is not passive. They are fully engaged. They do not waste energy on doubting every decision. They do not hesitate out of fear of making the wrong move. They act with presence, knowing that even mistakes are part of the unfolding. A person who believes they are lost will hesitate at every turn. A person who trusts where they are will move forward with confidence. Buddhism teaches that suffering arises from grasping, from trying to control what cannot be controlled, from resisting what already is. The belief that life should be different creates suffering. The belief that the present is not enough creates suffering. The idea that purpose exists only in the future creates suffering. Dharma teaches that the only way to find peace is to let go of these illusions, to see that nothing is missing, to see that this moment is not a mistake, to see that life is not happening to a person but through them. The need to compare, to measure, to constantly evaluate where one stands against others creates the illusion of being off track. But comparison is based on false assumptions. No two paths are the same. No two people have the same lessons, the same timing, the same Dharma. The belief that one should be further along is rooted in an artificial standard. Life is not a race. It does not move according to a universal schedule. Trusting Dharma means recognizing that everything is unfolding at the right pace, that nothing is delayed, that there is no such thing as being behind. Many people fear that they have wasted time, that they have spent too many years in the wrong place, doing the wrong things. But Dharma does not waste anything. Even the moments that seemed aimless were part of the journey. Even the mistakes were teachers. The suffering of believing that time was lost is based on a misunderstanding. Nothing was lost. Every experience shaped the awareness that exists now. The person who regrets their past is not seeing clearly. They are judging themselves from a place of hindsight, forgetting that those moments were necessary for the growth that has occurred. The mind creates stories of what life should have been. It assumes that another path would have led to greater fulfillment. But this is illusion. The idea that one could have chosen better assumes that there was a better choice. But how could there have been? The person making decisions in the past was doing so with the understanding they had at the time. They could not have acted differently. The mind that now sees things differently only sees them that way because of the experiences that came before. Trusting Dharma means understanding that nothing was wasted, that even what felt like detours were still part of the path. Dharma is not a set plan. It is not a fixed purpose assigned at birth. It is the unfolding of life in each moment. The mind resists this because it wants certainty. It wants to know that it is moving towards something definite. But the search for certainty is what creates anxiety. The person who needs to know everything before they trust will always feel restless. The person who trusts that each step is enough will always feel at peace. Life does not need to be mapped out in advance to be meaningful. The path is created through walking it. There is a deep tendency to believe that if life is not currently how one wants it to be, something has gone wrong. But this assumes that happiness is only found in certain conditions. It assumes that fulfillment comes only when things look a certain way. But Buddhism teaches that peace is available now. It is not waiting at the end of struggle. It is not the result of finally figuring everything out. It is here, in this moment, when one stops resisting it. The mind that believes it must first reach some future point before it can be at ease is trapped in illusion. Dharma is not something to be reached. It is something to be lived. Trusting Dharma means understanding that every experience is part of the journey, that even uncertainty is a necessary phase, that not knowing is not failure, but part of the process. The fear of being lost disappears when one stops needing to be certain. The need for reassurance fades when one stops doubting that life is exactly as it should be. The person who trusts their path does not need external validation. They do not need proof that things will work out. They move forward not because they have guarantees, but because they understand that everything is unfolding as it must. The suffering of doubt, of hesitation, of feeling out of place is not caused by life itself. It is caused by resistance to life. The belief that one must be somewhere else, someone else, living some other reality, creates suffering. The moment this belief is released, peace arises. Nothing needs to be fixed. Nothing needs to be forced. Dharma is not found by chasing something outside of oneself. It is found in the quiet realization that this moment, exactly as it is, holds everything. That where one stands now is not a mistake. That nothing has been lost. That life is not waiting to begin. It is already happening, right here, right now, exactly as it should. Trusting that life is unfolding as it should brings deep relief, but another struggle remains: speed. The mind, conditioned by urgency, still believes that progress must happen quickly. It equates movement with worth, pace with success, and acceleration with achievement. Even after accepting that the path is unfolding naturally, there is still a lingering tension, a whisper that says things should be happening faster. But this belief is rooted in illusion. True awakening is not rushed. The deepest transformations do not happen through speed, but through stillness. The greatest wisdom is not found in reaching more milestones, but in sinking fully into what already is. Slowness is not stagnation. It is not delay. It is the space where real growth happens. The world moves quickly, pressuring people to keep up. There is an unspoken demand to achieve more, to improve constantly, to measure progress by external standards. This pressure convinces people that if they are not moving fast enough, they are failing. But speed does not guarantee depth. Rushing does not lead to wisdom. A life spent chasing is a life never fully lived. Awakening is not a race. There is no finish line. The mind that resists slowness is the mind that suffers. The person who believes they are falling behind is blind to what is already unfolding. The belief that things must happen at a certain pace is an artificial construct. There is no universal timeline. Everything is moving at exactly the speed it needs to. The greatest insights arise in stillness. The moments of deep understanding, of real clarity, do not come when one is rushing from task to task. They come in quiet. They emerge when the mind is not fixated on what must happen next, but is fully engaged with what is happening now. The habit of constantly looking ahead blinds people to the richness of the present. They search for transformation in future milestones, unaware that transformation is already happening in the spaces they overlook. The person who rushes through life never truly sees it. The person who embraces slowness begins to notice everything. The mind resists slowness because it associates it with loss. It fears that if it stops, it will be left behind, that if it does not keep moving, others will surpass it. But comparison is an illusion. No two paths are the same. No two awakenings unfold in identical ways. The belief that speed equals progress assumes that there is a final destination to reach. But there is no arrival point in awakening. There is only deeper unfolding. Rushing does not bring clarity faster. It often prevents it. The greatest teachers throughout history did not find wisdom through endless striving. They found it in stillness, in quiet reflection, in allowing understanding to arise naturally rather than forcing it. Slowness allows integration. When lessons are absorbed gradually, they become part of one's being. When they are rushed, they remain surface level. A person who moves too quickly through life collects experiences without truly embodying their wisdom. They may have knowledge, but they lack depth. The person who embraces slowness, who allows understanding to take root deeply, gains something far greater than surface-level success. They gain inner transformation. They gain unshakable awareness. They become deeply aligned with what is, rather than constantly chasing what could be. The pressure to move quickly is deeply ingrained. It is reinforced from childhood, through education, through culture, through expectations. There is an underlying message that one must always be achieving, always be advancing, always be improving. This mindset creates restlessness. It makes people believe that if they are not constantly moving forward, they are failing. But real growth does not happen through speed. It happens through presence. The person who is fully engaged with where they are right now is the one who is truly evolving. They do not need to prove their progress to anyone. They do not need external validation to confirm that they are on the right path. They simply live, moment by moment, fully immersed in the process. Slowness is not inactivity. It is not avoidance. It is deep engagement with what is. It is the willingness to be with oneself, without distraction, without the need to rush toward an imagined future. The person who is always running does not know themselves. They are too busy trying to get somewhere else. But the person who slows down, who stops grasping, begins to see with clarity. They understand that everything they seek is not waiting in the future. It is here. It has always been here. It was only overlooked in the rush to move forward. Rushing creates stress. It places unnecessary strain on the mind, convincing it that something is missing, that something must be done faster. But nothing meaningful is gained through stress. Stress clouds perception. It makes decisions reactive rather than intentional. It creates tension in the body, agitation in the mind, and a constant sense of unease. The person who is always in a hurry is never at peace. They may accomplish many things, but they never truly rest. Their victories feel empty because they have not slowed down enough to experience them fully. The person who embraces slowness, who is fully present with what they are doing, finds fulfillment in the smallest of actions. They do not need grand achievements to feel complete. They find depth in simplicity. The belief that slowness means missing opportunities is an illusion. Some of the greatest opportunities arise in stillness. Many of the best decisions are made when there is space to reflect. Clarity does not come from rushing. It comes from allowing things to settle, from seeing without urgency. A mind that is constantly speeding forward does not notice the subtle shifts, the hidden possibilities, the moments of deep connection. A mind that moves with slowness sees everything. It is not distracted by the noise of speed. It is fully awake. Slowness is presence. It is an act of trust. It is the understanding that nothing is being lost by moving at a natural pace. The pressure to achieve quickly is rooted in fear. The fear of not being enough, of not having enough, of missing out. But nothing real can be missed. What is meant to unfold will unfold. Forcing things to happen faster does not create better results. It only creates exhaustion. A river does not rush its way to the ocean. It flows. It does not panic. It does not force its way through obstacles. It moves with patience, with ease, knowing that it will reach where it needs to be in time. Human life is no different. The mind that accepts this stops struggling. It lets go of the need to hurry. It moves with confidence, not desperation. Slowness leads to deeper awareness. When one is not caught in the rush of constant action, they begin to see what was always there, but unnoticed. They hear their own thoughts more clearly. They recognize patterns they were previously blind to. They develop an inner stillness that is unshaken by external pressures. They are not controlled by deadlines, by comparisons, by artificial timelines. They act with deep knowing rather than impulsive urgency. They trust their process, not because they know exactly where it is leading, but because they understand that forcing it will not make it happen faster. The most profound transformations happen not when one is rushing toward them, but when one allows them to unfold naturally. Growth is not something that can be scheduled. It happens in its own time, in its own way. The mind that understands this does not resist. It does not panic when things take longer than expected. It does not force things that are not ready. It moves when it is time to move. It rests when it is time to rest. It does not waste energy on unnecessary urgency. Slowness is the foundation of wisdom. It allows experiences to be fully absorbed, lessons to be deeply understood, emotions to be processed without suppression. A life lived in slowness is not a life of inaction. It is a life of depth. It is a life where every moment is fully experienced, rather than hurried through in a rush to reach the next. Awakening does not come from reaching more goals. It comes from being fully present with what's happening now. The person who slows down is not missing out on anything. They are seeing everything more clearly than those who are rushing by. The belief that speed equals success is an illusion. The greatest achievements, the deepest insights, the most meaningful moments are not created by rushing toward them. They emerge naturally when there is space for them to unfold. The person who understands this no longer fears slowness. They no longer feel the need to constantly prove their progress. They know that moving at their own pace is not a weakness. It is a strength. It is a sign of deep trust, of deep wisdom, of a deep connection to life as it is, rather than as the mind demands it to be. Slowing down dissolves the illusion of urgency, but another fear lingers beneath the surface, the fear of running out of time. Even after accepting that life unfolds at its own pace, the mind still clings to the idea that time is slipping away. The belief that it might be too late, that there is not enough time left, that opportunities have passed, weighs heavily. This fear is one of the deepest sources of suffering, creating anxiety about the future and regret about the past. Buddhism addresses this fear directly through Maranasati, the practice of death awareness. This is not a morbid fixation, nor is it about fearing the end. It is a profound meditation that brings clarity, dissolves illusions, and frees the mind from the grasp of time itself. The mind resists thinking about death. It avoids it, distracts itself, and pretends that it is something distant. But denial only strengthens fear. The more one tries to ignore death, the more power it holds. Buddhism teaches that awareness of death is not a source of suffering. It is the key to liberation. When one fully understands the reality of impermanence, the weight of the past and the anxiety of the future disappear. The fear of being too late dissolves, not because time has been extended, but because attachment to time has been released. Nothing is too late because nothing was ever guaranteed to begin with. Every moment is already complete. There is nothing to race toward, nothing to hold on to. The idea that there is some final point that must be reached before time runs out is a delusion. Regret about the past and anxiety about the future both stem from the illusion of permanence. The mind assumes that life was supposed to go a certain way, that things should have been different, that if only different choices had been made, there would be more time for what matters. But Maranasati reveals that all of this is based on a false premise. There is no set timeline, no fixed script, no guaranteed path. Life is unfolding moment by moment, and every moment is a complete experience in itself. The belief that things should have been different assumes that something was ever truly under control. But control is an illusion. The past unfolded as it did because of the conditions that existed at the time. The present is shaped by what is happening now. The future is unknown. There is no race, no final achievement that will bring lasting fulfillment. The fear of running out of time comes from believing that there is something missing. But nothing is missing when one is fully present. When death awareness is deeply understood, priorities shift. What once seemed urgent no longer holds power. What once created stress loses significance. The things the mind clung to, achievements, validation, external success, are seen for what they are: temporary, fleeting, impermanent. This is not a reason for despair. It is a reason for freedom. It is a reminder that life is not about accumulating more, proving more, or holding on to anything. It is about fully experiencing what is here. The suffering of thinking it is too late to change, to start over, to find meaning, vanishes when one sees that every moment is already enough. There is no deadline for transformation, no expiration date on awakening. Many people avoid thinking about death because they assume it will bring fear, but it is the avoidance of death that creates fear. When one truly faces mortality, a shift occurs. The mind stops wasting energy on meaningless worries. The need to constantly prove something disappears. The things that once seemed so important become secondary. A new clarity emerges. What matters is not how much time remains, but how deeply each moment is lived. There is no such thing as being too late, because life is not measured by external milestones. It is measured by presence, by awareness, by the depth of experience in each moment. Maranasati does not mean passively waiting for death. It means living fully, without wasting time on things that do not matter. It means understanding that since death is certain, nothing needs to be postponed. If something is meaningful, it should be done now. If something is worth saying, it should be said now. If something is worth experiencing, it should be experienced now. There is no waiting for a better time, because the only time that is ever guaranteed is the present. The suffering of believing that life is slipping away comes from the illusion that there was ever anything to hold on to. But nothing was ever permanent. Nothing was ever secure. The sooner this truth is accepted, the sooner fear is replaced with peace. When death is fully acknowledged, there is no room for comparison. There is no need to measure progress against others. There is no desire to chase after things that hold no real meaning. The person who is aware of death does not waste energy proving their worth. They do not worry about being behind, because there is no behind. They do not live in fear of missed opportunities, because they understand that every moment holds infinite possibility. They are not trapped by regret, because they know that the past cannot be undone. They live with lightness, not because they ignore reality, but because they see reality clearly. Nothing is worth clinging to. Nothing is worth fearing. Everything is always in motion, always changing, always impermanent. The practice of Maranasati is not about dwelling on death in a way that causes distress. It is about using awareness of mortality as a guide for living fully. When one truly understands that life is temporary, there's no hesitation. There's no waiting to be ready, no postponing happiness until the right conditions arise. There is only now. The need to be perfect, to have everything figured out, to meet some imaginary standard, disappears. The person who embraces death awareness does not fear making mistakes, because they understand that mistakes are part of the unfolding. They do not cling to failures, because they know that everything passes. They do not fear the unknown, because they have already accepted that nothing was ever certain. Many fear that thinking about death will lead to hopelessness, but the opposite is true. It leads to the deepest appreciation of life. The person who lives in denial of death does not truly live. They go through the motions, always assuming that there will be more time, always pushing things into the future. But the person who embraces death awareness sees everything differently. They savor moments that others overlook. They do not rush through life. They do not waste time chasing things that will not matter in the end. They do not hold grudges. They do not carry unnecessary burdens. They are free. Regret dissolves when one sees that nothing was ever permanent. The belief that time was wasted assumes that life was supposed to follow a specific timeline, but life does not unfold according to rigid expectations. It moves as it must. Every experience, every delay, every seeming mistake was part of the process. The suffering of feeling behind vanishes when one understands that life was never about keeping up. It was about being here now, fully engaged. The person who embraces Maranasati does not wish for more time in a desperate attempt to fix the past. They use the time they have with deep presence, knowing that nothing was ever truly lost. Anxiety about the future disappears when one accepts that control was never real. No one knows how much time remains. No one knows what will unfold. The mind that obsesses over the future suffers because it tries to grasp what cannot be grasped. But the person who understands impermanence is not weighed down by this uncertainty. They do not need to know what will happen next. They do not waste energy fearing what is unknown. They live with trust, not because they believe everything will be perfect, but because they know that whatever happens, they will meet it with presence. The practice of death awareness is not about detachment from life. It is about deeper connection. It is about seeing clearly, with open eyes, without denial, without avoidance. It is about realizing that the things that once seemed so important, the worries, the comparisons, the endless striving, were never real sources of fulfillment. The person who truly embraces mortality lives differently. They are not afraid to love fully, to express gratitude, to experience life without holding back. They do not hesitate. They do not wait. They live in a way that leaves no room for regret. Letting go of the fear of being too late does not come from gaining more time. It comes from realizing that nothing is missing in the present. The belief that there was something to catch up to was an illusion. The belief that life should have followed a different course was an illusion. There is no too late, no falling behind, no wasted years. There is only this moment, and it is enough. The person who sees this clearly is free, not because they have extended their time, but because they have stopped fearing its limits. Death awareness does not take anything away. It gives everything back. Accepting mortality dissolves the illusion of time slipping away, but another illusion remains: the belief that progress must be controlled. Even after realizing that life is impermanent, the mind still holds on to an invisible timeline, measuring growth, tracking results, and expecting transformation to unfold in a specific way. There is a subtle grasping, a need to see improvement, a desire to ensure that every effort leads to something tangible. This attachment to progress creates tension, making growth feel like an uphill struggle rather than a natural unfolding. Buddhism reveals a paradox. True transformation does not come from chasing results, but from letting go of them. Non-attachment to progress is not stagnation. It is the deepest freedom, the space where real growth happens without force. The mind has been conditioned to believe that growth must be linear, that improvement must be measurable, that success must be seen. This creates suffering because it sets an expectation that reality cannot always fulfill. Life does not move in straight lines. It unfolds in cycles, in rhythms, in ways that often cannot be predicted or controlled. The need to track progress assumes that transformation can be quantified, but real change happens beneath the surface, often unnoticed, until one day everything is different. The person who fixates on progress is like someone watching a tree grow, expecting to see results every second. But growth does not work that way. It is not forced. It happens in its own time, in its own way, and often without visible signs until the moment is right. Letting go of attachment to progress does not mean abandoning effort. It means releasing the grasping, the obsession with outcomes, the anxiety of needing to prove that change is happening. The belief that growth is only real if it can be measured is rooted in insecurity. It assumes that if there is no proof of progress, then nothing is happening. But this is illusion. Many of the deepest transformations occur in silence, in stillness, in ways that cannot be explained or seen. A person may feel stuck for years, believing they are not evolving, only to wake up one day and realize they have changed completely. This is the nature of real growth. It does not announce itself. It's not something to be forced or controlled. It happens when the conditions are right, when the mind is no longer grasping, when one is no longer suffocating the process with expectation. Non-attachment to progress allows space for organic transformation. The person who clings to growth tries to dictate its pace, but this only creates frustration. They measure themselves against unrealistic timelines, compare their path to others, and become impatient when results do not appear quickly. This impatience leads to doubt, to discouragement, to the belief that nothing is changing. But growth is not something that can be scheduled. It's not something that can be demanded. A flower does not bloom because it's told to. It blooms because the right conditions arise naturally. The mind that understands this stops struggling. It no longer needs to see proof. It simply trusts. Attachment to progress is a form of control. It comes from the fear that without constant effort, nothing will change. But the need to control growth is what prevents it. A clenched fist cannot receive. A tense mind cannot see clearly. The person who lets go of the need to track progress begins to experience a different kind of growth. One that is effortless, one that arises without force, one that unfolds in ways the mind could not have planned. This is not passive. It is the deepest form of trust. It is the understanding that life itself is always moving, always evolving, always changing, and that one does not need to interfere for growth to happen. The obsession with progress often leads to exhaustion. The need to constantly improve, to always be evolving, to never feel stuck, creates stress. It turns life into an endless self-improvement project, where each moment is judged by how much it contributes to some future goal. But the person who is always trying to improve is never at peace. They are always in pursuit, never fully arriving. The belief that growth must be a constant climb leaves no room for rest, no space for appreciation, no moment to simply be. Non-attachment to progress means stepping off this cycle, releasing the pressure to always be better, and understanding that growth happens even in stillness. The person who stops grasping for change often finds that change happens more effortlessly than ever before. Growth is not something that can be forced. It is something that is allowed. The mind that constantly checks its progress interrupts its own evolution. It is like pulling up the roots of a plant to see if it is growing. This impatience creates resistance, turning transformation into a struggle. But the person who trusts the process, who does the work without demanding immediate results, experiences something different. They grow without pressure. They evolve without force. They wake up one day and realize they are no longer the same person, not because they chased progress, but because they allowed it to unfold naturally. Non-attachment to progress does not mean a lack of effort. It means effort without clinging. It means practicing discipline without obsessing over results. It means taking action without demanding that it leads to a specific outcome. The person who releases their grip on progress finds a new kind of freedom, one where they are no longer tormented by the fear of falling behind, no longer controlled by the need to prove their worth through growth. They move forward with clarity, with ease, with an understanding that transformation is happening even when it is unseen. Letting go of the need to measure progress also dissolves comparison. Many suffer because they believe they should be further along, that others are evolving faster, that they are being left behind. But comparison is an illusion. No two people have the same lessons, the same timing, the same path. The belief that growth should happen at the same pace for everyone assumes that life is uniform, but life is deeply personal. The person who lets go of comparison sees their journey for what it is, unique, unfolding exactly as it should, not in competition with anyone else. They stop looking at others as benchmarks and start seeing them as fellow travelers, each moving through life at their own rhythm. Attachment to progress is often disguised as ambition, but true ambition does not need to control outcomes. It is not fueled by fear, by insecurity, by the desperate need to prove something. Real ambition is quiet. It is steady. It moves without force. It understands that effort is meaningful even when results are not immediate. It does not demand guarantees. It does not need to see every step in advance. The person who embodies non-attachment to progress does not waste time worrying if they are growing fast enough. They do the work because the work itself matters. They live fully, knowing that every experience, even the ones that feel like setbacks, are part of the unfolding. Letting go of the need to control progress also brings peace to moments of stillness. Many fear stagnation, believing that if they are not constantly improving, they are failing. But not all growth is visible. Some of the deepest transformations happen in silence, in waiting, in what looks like inaction from the outside. The caterpillar does not rush to become a butterfly. It rests in stillness until the time is right. The person who understands this stops fearing pauses. They stop trying to force change before it is ready. They allow themselves to be exactly where they are, without judgment, without impatience, without the belief that they should be somewhere else. Releasing attachment to progress does not mean giving up. It means surrendering the illusion that growth is something that can be controlled. It means moving with life rather than fighting against it. It means trusting that every experience, even the ones that feel slow, even the ones that feel uncertain, are part of something greater. The person who lets go of the need to measure progress finds something deeper than achievement. They find freedom. They find clarity. They find that growth was never about chasing something in the future. It was always about how fully they were living in the present. True transformation is not the result of grasping. It is the result of allowing. The deepest growth does not happen when one is obsessed with improvement. It happens when one stops interfering with their own unfolding. The person who embraces non-attachment to progress does not waste time worrying if they are changing fast enough. They do not force transformation. They trust that it is already happening in ways they cannot see, in ways they do not need to measure, in ways that will reveal themselves in time. They are free, not because they have reached some final stage of growth, but because they no longer believe they need to. Life was never a race. The pressure to keep up, the anxiety of feeling behind, the illusion that others are ahead, all of it dissolves the moment you step off the wheel of comparison and step fully into the present. Buddhism doesn't teach you how to catch up. It teaches you that you were never behind in the first place. Time is a construct. Progress is non-linear, and true fulfillment is not found in chasing milestones, but in deepening your awareness of each moment. Samsara keeps people trapped in an endless cycle of seeking, believing that the next achievement, the next breakthrough, or the next phase will bring peace. But real peace is already here, waiting in the space between thoughts, in the quiet acceptance of what is. When you let go of rigid timelines and detach from the illusion of external validation, life begins to flow effortlessly. You stop grasping for control, stop fearing that it's too late, and start moving in harmony with your own path. Growth does not happen by force. The deepest transformation occurs when you stop measuring, stop rushing, and allow things to unfold naturally. The paradox of progress is that the more you cling to it, the more it slips through your fingers. The moment you release attachment to results, everything begins to shift in ways you never expected. Your path is unfolding at exactly the right speed, not a moment too soon, not a moment too late. The practice of death awareness reminds you that time is precious, not because it is running out, but because it was never yours to control in the first place. This understanding does not bring fear, it brings liberation. It silences regret, dissolves anxiety, and leaves only the clarity of the present moment. There is no too late, only the decision to wake up now. The teachings of Buddhism do not give you a new set of rules to follow. They give you freedom. The freedom to stop living by external timelines, to stop chasing after illusions, and to finally trust that you are exactly where you need to be. There is nothing to catch up to. There is only now, and now is enough. If these teachings resonated with you, share your thoughts in the comments. What lesson stood out to you the most? What are you ready to let go of? Let's continue the conversation below. And if you found value in this, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. More wisdom is waiting, and you won't want to miss what's next. Until then, live fully, trust deeply, and walk your path with peace.